My name is Dashiell Reed and I am 23 years old. I study computer science at Boston University. Or rather, I studied it. 3 months ago, I dropped out of the program, moved out of my apartment, destroyed all my electronic devices, and now I live with my parents in a small town in New Hampshire, where the internet is slow and technology is minimal. My therapist says that writing about what happened will help, that putting the words on paper, physical paper, not digital, will take the power away from the trauma. I don't know if she's right, but here I am with a ballpoint pen and a notebook trying to articulate the nightmare that began with simple curiosity and ended with the complete destruction of any sense of privacy or security I ever had. It all started in October. I was a third-year student living alone in a small apartment near campus, a one-room studio, efficient, with a window overlooking an alley. My life was predictable. Classes, programming, video games, sleep. I had few close friends, preferring the solitude of my code and the company of my screens. Cruel irony, considering what was to come. In one of my cybersecurity classes, the professor mentioned the deep web in passing. Beyond the surface web that everyone uses lies the deep web, and within it, the dark web. Accessible only with specific tools like Tor. It's the digital Wild West, illegal markets, extremist forms, disturbing content. My advice, stay away. Curiosity kills more than cats in those spaces. Naturally, that piqued my interest. I am, or was, the type who disassembled computers at 12 years old just to see how they worked. A prohibition is an invitation for minds like mine. That night, I downloaded the Tor browser, set up VPN after VPN to maximize anonymity, and dove in. The first few hours were disappointing. The dark web is mostly boring. Closed markets, inactive forums, slow sites. I found links to disturbing things, drug markets, extreme conspiracy theory forums, but nothing that truly captured my attention. I was about to close it all when I found a link in a dark directory. Observatorio Live. Real transmissions 24/7. I clicked. The page loaded slowly. Minimalist design. Black background. White text. No ads, no elaborate logo. Just a list of active streams with alphanumeric codes as titles. Cam 3829 Boston. Cam 1047 Seattle. Cam 5522 Miami. I picked one at random. Cam 2293 Chicago. A video player opened, and there it was. A live transmission of a living room. Gray sofa, television on showing news, coffee table with a laptop, all from a fixed angle, like a security camera. But it didn't look like a commercial security camera feed. It was different, more intimate, like a webcam. I watched for 5 minutes. Nothing happened. Just the empty room with the television on. Bored, I switched to another. Cam 8834 Portland. Bedroom. Unmade bed, clothes on the floor. And at the desk, a man from behind working on his computer. He didn't know he was being filmed. His posture was relaxed, intimate. He scratched himself, adjusted his headphones, kept typing. A chill ran through me. This wasn't a public camera. This was private. Someone was being watched without their knowledge. I checked the main page again. At the bottom, in small text. All feeds are from compromised devices. Laptop cameras, smartphones, smart TVs, hacked security cameras. Enjoy the show. And below, a counter. Current viewers, 847. 847 people watching private transmissions of unwitting individuals. My stomach twisted. This was illegal. This was a massive violation of privacy. This was fascinating. Horrible, but fascinating. The dark part of my brain, the same one that made me want to understand how things worked even when I knew they were broken, pushed me to keep watching. I clicked another transmission. Cam 4462, NYC. Kitchen. A woman cooking, talking on the phone, laughing, completely unaware. The camera was at a strange angle, probably a laptop on the kitchen island. I could see her face, her expressions, her intimate life exposed to hundreds of strangers. I closed the window, feeling dirty. This was wrong. deeply wrong. But I couldn't help going back. Over the next 2 weeks, I logged into the site almost every night. I told myself it was research, that I needed to understand the vulnerabilities of connected devices for my cybersecurity career. Lies. It was pure voyeurism, the forbidden thrill of watching private lives without consent. The feeds changed constantly. Some disappeared, new ones appeared. There was a pattern. All were domestic spaces, never offices or public places, just homes, bedrooms, living rooms, kitchens, stolen intimacy. The site had a built-in chat. Anonymous, of course. The comments were varied, some technical. This feed is from a Logitech C920 webcam, probably firmware compromise. Others perverse. Look at that one in cam 3321. She's changing. Some chilling. I know that house. It's in my neighborhood. I should drop by. I never commented. I just watched, both the transmissions and the comments, studying the ecosystem of non-consensual surveillance. Then, one November night, I clicked Cam 77 Ortiter Boston. The transmission loaded, and I froze. It was my apartment, my living room, my sofa, my laptop exactly where I'd left it on the coffee table. The shot was from my smart TV, the one I'd bought cheap on Black Friday the year before. I thought it was a good deal. I never considered that the built-in camera could be. My brain struggled to process it. This couldn't be real. It had to be a coincidence. Apartments look similar, but no. There was my The Matrix poster on the wall, my red hoodie draped over the chair back, my specific coffee mug on the table. Someone was broadcasting me, live, to this site, to 800 viewers. The panic was visceral. I jumped from my chair, ran to my TV, and yanked the plug out, violently. Back to my laptop, closed Tor, closed everything, breathing ragged, hands shaking. I checked my TV. It was a cheap smart TV from a brand I'd never heard of, bought from a third party on Amazon, probably factory-compromised firmware, or hacked afterward. It didn't matter how. The point was, it was. How long? How long had they been watching me? I checked the feed history, if it had one. No obvious timestamps, but old chat comments gave clues. One from 2 months ago. This guy's boring, just plays video games and eats pizza. That was exactly my routine from that period. 2 months. They'd watched me for at least 2 months. What had they seen? My mind raced through every private moment of those months. Changing clothes. Video calls with my mother where I cried about academic stress. Nights when I fell asleep on the sofa in my underwear. Moments of personal intimacy that I never, ever wanted anyone to see. And they hadn't just seen me. They'd commented, analyzed, judged, turned my life into entertainment. I needed to know more. I needed to know what else was compromised. With trembling hands, I downloaded malware detection software, scanned my laptop. Result, remote access, Trojan, RAY-T installed. My webcam had been remotely controlled. How long? The log showed activity from August, 4 months, my phone. I checked my smartphone. It was harder to detect compromises on Android, but with specific tools, I found a hidden app. Screen recorder with access to camera and microphone. Transmitting everything. Everything. Every call, every message, every photo, every moment I used it in the bathroom, every embarrassing 2 a.m. search, every private conversation with friends. All captured, all shared, the horror multiplied. It wasn't just one device. It was my entire digital life, completely compromised. How had it happened? I thought about recent downloads, apps, clicks, that pirated game I downloaded from a shady site, that free video editing software, that phishing email I almost opened but thought better of. Except maybe I did open an attachment without realizing. 1,000 possible infection vectors. And me, a computer science student supposedly knowledgeable, had fallen for them all. The paranoia hit then. Real, suffocating. If my TV, laptop, and phone were compromised, what else? My router? My gaming console? The cheap IoT devices I'd bought. I unplugged everything. Every electronic device in my apartment. Unplugged, powered off, batteries removed where possible. My apartment became a silent tomb without the constant hum of electronics. But even in the silence, I felt the eyes. I knew they'd watched me before. How to know if they'd stopped. How to prove the absence of surveillance. I couldn't. That's the nature of surveillance terror. Once you know it's possible, you never feel unobserved again. I slept poorly that night. When I finally fell into uneasy sleep, I had nightmares of 1,000 digital eyes watching every move. The next day, with my laptop powered off and sealed in my backpack, I went to the campus library, used a public computer, created a new email account, contacted the FBI's cyber police. I filed a report, sent URLs of the site, screenshots, malware evidence. They responded with a case number and a promise of investigation. This is part of a larger digital voyeurism network. We're on it. Stay vigilant. It wasn't enough. Stay vigilant when every device is a potential spy, when your life has been broadcast as a non-consensual reality show to hundreds of perverts. I bought new devices, new laptop, new phone, from reputable retailers with maximum security. Configured everything from scratch without restoring compromised backups. Reinstalled operating systems. Encrypted everything. Covered cameras with physical tape. Distrusted every app, every permission, every update. But the damage was done. Psychologically. I couldn't use devices without thinking, who's on the other side? Who's watching now? I stopped changing in my apartment. Used the bathroom with the light off. Spoke in whispers even when I was alone. My apartment wasn't my space anymore. It was a stage where I performed for an invisible audience. The university became impossible. I couldn't concentrate. Every camera in every building made me jump. Legitimate security cameras felt like accusatory eyes. Were they broadcasting me too? Had the campus security feeds been hacked as well? My classmate Lennox noticed my deterioration. Dash, you okay? You seem paranoid. Did you know your laptop is probably watching you? I said, my voice louder than intended. That your phone records everything. That there are entire sites dedicated to broadcasting private lives of people like us. He backed away. Dude, chill. Yeah, surveillance exists, but not that extreme. You're exaggerating. I wasn't exaggerating, but I couldn't explain without sounding crazy. 2 weeks after the discovery, with my new, secure laptop, I did something stupid. I went back to the site. I needed to know. Had my feed disappeared after unplugging everything, or were they still broadcasting me somehow? I navigated to Observatorio Live, searched Boston among the active feeds, and there, among dozens of others, it was Cam77 Boston Dashel. My name, they used my real name. I clicked with trembling hands. The transmission loaded, and to my absolute horror, it was me, in that moment, sitting at my laptop, staring at the screen, watching myself, but how? I'd reinstalled everything. I'd been meticulous. Then I saw the angle. It wasn't from my webcam. It was from above, slightly to the right. I looked up slowly. The smoke detector on the ceiling. I'd never considered it. It was part of the apartment when I moved in. A smoke detector with a hidden camera, installed by the previous landlord, or by someone who broke in when I wasn't there. I stood abruptly, knocking over the chair, climbed onto the table, yanked the detector from the ceiling. White plastic shattered in my hands, and there, embedded in the circuit, a small camera, lens the size of a pinhead, transmitting via the apartment's Wi-Fi. I threw it to the floor, stomped it until it was electronic dust. But the damage was done. Even with all my security efforts, they were still watching me. Because the weak point wasn't just my devices, it was the physical space itself. Back to my laptop. The transmission had cut out, replaced by text. Feed interrupted. But in the chat, frenzied activity. Oh shit, he knows. Dash found the camera, LOL. This is getting interesting. Does anyone have his other feeds? I want to see his reaction. Other feeds. Plural. There were more cameras. There had to be more. I spent the next 4 hours tearing apart my apartment. Checked every smoke detector, every vent outlet, every outlet. Found 3 more cameras. One in the bedroom smoke detector. One in a digital clock by the bed that I thought was mine but had appeared one day. I assumed I'd bought it drunk and forgotten. One in a USB charger I'd found in my car months ago. Planned. It had all been planned. Someone had physically accessed my life, planted devices, and watched me for months. Who? The landlord, a classmate, an obsessed stranger, an organization? I'd never know, because that's the nature of this surveillance. It's anonymous, ubiquitous, invisible until it's not. I called the FBI again, sent photos of the devices. They said they'd come review the apartment for forensic evidence. But I couldn't wait. I couldn't spend another night there. I packed a suitcase, left most of my things behind. Everything was contaminated. I drove to my parents' house in New Hampshire that night. 3 hours of driving, constantly checking the rearview mirror, paranoid that someone was following me. My parents were confused, worried. I explained the basics without the disturbing details. Security issue in my apartment. I need time away. They accepted it without pressing too hard. In their house, no smart TV, with basic internet, with an old computer that barely worked. I started breathing again, but the psychological damage remained. I covered the webcam on their computer with tape. Avoided video calls. Left my phone in another room when talking about personal things. I officially dropped out of the university in December. I couldn't go back. The entire campus felt like a panopticon. Every device, every camera, every shiny surface that could hide a lens was a threat. The FBI contacted me in January. They'd arrested 2 individuals connected to Observatorio Live, a larger network operating from Eastern Europe, but with nodes in the United States. 1,000 estimated victims. But most operators remained anonymous, hidden behind encryption and multiple jurisdictions. The 2 arrested were Americans who facilitated the physical installation of devices in private spaces. One was a residential security technician who installed compromised smoke detectors. The other worked for an electronics store that pre-installed malware on devices before sale. How had they selected me? Social media profile indicating I lived alone. College student desirable demographic for the site's audience. Predictable routines, easy to infiltrate. It wasn't personal, it was industrial. I was the product. My privacy was a commodity. My life was entertainment. The charges were severe: invasion of privacy, production of voyeuristic material, conspiracy. They faced decades in prison. But that didn't undo what they'd done to me. It didn't give back the months of my life that were stolen, watched, commented on. 3 months have passed. I see a new therapist specializing in surveillance trauma. Yes, there's a specialty for that. Enough victims of hacking, digital stalking, sextortion to create an entire field. She tells me that eventually I'll trust technology again, that I can relearn healthy boundaries, that the trauma doesn't have to define me permanently. But when I look at my new laptop, bought directly from the manufacturer, meticulously inspected, webcam permanently covered, I don't see a tool. I see possible betrayal. I see a portal to invisible eyes. When my phone vibrates with a notification, I jump. Is it a real message or a malware alert? Am I being tracked? Who's reading this? When I visit a friend's house and see their smart TV, Echo Dot, security cameras for protection, I want to scream. Don't they understand? Every device is a vulnerability. Every camera is a potential window to strangers. But they live confidently. They don't know. They haven't seen the other side. They haven't discovered their own life broadcast to multitudes. Sometimes I think, maybe I'm still being watched. Maybe there's a camera I didn't find. Maybe someone is reading this document as I write it, laughing at my paranoia. I can't know. That's the curse. Once Pandora's box of surveillance is opened, it never closes completely. The certainty of privacy is an illusion I lost and will never regain. My name is Dashiell Reed. I am 23 years old. For 4 months, I was a live show for hundreds of strangers. My private life was public entertainment. My vulnerable moments were commented on, saved, shared. And the most terrifying part, I'll probably never know everything they saw, everything they took, everything they store on servers I'll never find, on devices they'll never confiscate. I'm a ghost in my own life now, acting as if I have privacy while suspecting I don't, speaking as if no one hears me while assuming they do. This is what modern digital surveillance does. It doesn't need to be constant to be effective. It just needs to be possible. And once you know it's possible, that your life can be stolen with a click, with a planted device, with malware downloaded unwittingly, you're never the same person again. We live in an era of total surveillance. Your laptop watches you, your phone listens, your TV records you. Your IoT devices are Trojan horses in your home. And the worst part, it's normalized. If you have nothing to hide, why worry? It's the price of convenience. Accept the terms of service to continue. We accept it. We all accept it. We give apps permission to access cameras, microphones, location. We trust devices manufactured in foreign countries with unknown security standards. We connect every aspect of our lives to the internet for automation and efficiency. And some of us pay the price. We become the warning, the horror story, the statistic. 1,000 estimated victims of Observatorio Live. Just that one site. There are dozens more, hundreds perhaps. A complete ecosystem of digital voyeurism operating in the shadows of the deep web. How many people are being watched right now without knowing it? Thousands. Millions. How many have a secret life as a reality show for an audience they'll never know? I have no answers, only warnings. Cover your cameras, all of them, always. Review app permissions, distrust free software, inspect physical devices in your space, smoke detectors, clocks, chargers, USB drives found casually. Assume you're being watched, because you probably are. And if you find your life being broadcast in some dark corner of the internet, I just hope you're stronger than me, that it doesn't destroy you like it destroyed me, because the knowledge of a privacy violation isn't like other traumas. You can't escape. You can't close the door and feel safe, because the eyes are inside the house, inside your devices, inside your life, always watching, always recording, always there. Even now, as I write this with a ballpoint pen on paper, part of me wonders, is there a camera pointed over my shoulder? Is someone reading these words in real time? I can't know. And that eternal uncertainty is the true horror. Not the discovery, but the impossibility of certainty afterward. The permanent loss of perceived privacy. The end of digital innocence. Welcome to the era of total surveillance, where we are all stars in shows we never asked to star in, and the audience never, never stops watching. There are certain things you can't unsee, certain knowledge that, once acquired, clings to your mind like parasites. The feeling that someone is watching you through every camera, every screen, every digital reflection of your existence. That's the prison I live in now. And it all began with an innocuous link I found in a dark forum on the deep web. My name is Quillen Morse. I am 34 years old, and I used to be a freelance video editor in Seattle. Used to because 3 months ago I stopped being able to look at screens without feeling like something was staring back at me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I should start at the beginning, with the night when my professional curiosity turned into an obsession that nearly destroyed me. It was February, one of those gray months in Seattle where the sun barely bothers to show up. I'd been working on a project for a client who wanted edgy content, something that looks like it's from the dark web, for a fake documentary. Research, I told myself. Just research to make my work more authentic. I navigated through Tor for hours, exploring forums and sites that most people don't even know exist. Most of it was boring. Drug markets, illegal services, a lot of performative stupidity from teenagers who thought they were hackers. Nothing I hadn't seen before in my years editing documentaries about cybercrime. And then I found the link. It was in a forum specializing in alternative streaming content. Most of the links were garbage. Pirated sports streams, stolen pornography, that kind of thing. But one had a different title. Just a series of numbers. 04.12.47 North 074.00.23 West. Coordinates. I recognized the format immediately. Latitude and longitude. Out of curiosity, I looked them up on Google Maps. They pointed to a location in New York, somewhere in the Bronx, an industrial area near the river. The link had no description. Just those coordinates and a viewer counter, 3. 3 people, somewhere in the world, were watching. What? I clicked. My video player took a moment to load. The connection through Tor was slow. The image pixelated at first, but then it stabilized, and I saw what was being transmitted. A room, small with bare concrete walls, industrial lighting, a single bulb hanging from the ceiling, and in the center, a metal chair. Empty. That was it. Just an empty room streaming live. I waited. 5 minutes, 10. The image was completely static. No movement, no sound. Just that silent, empty room. Bored, I prepared to close the tab, but then something changed. The viewer counter rose to 4, and a second later, a door off-frame opened. I could hear it, even though I couldn't see it. The creak of rusty hinges. A figure entered the frame. It was a woman, middle-aged, dark hair pulled into a ponytail. She wore normal clothes, jeans, gray hoodie, sneakers. She looked ordinary, like someone you might see in the supermarket. She walked to the chair and sat down. Then she looked directly at the camera and smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who knows something you don't. A smile that says, "We're waiting for you." She sat there like that for maybe 30 seconds, just looking, smiling, without blinking. Then she stood up and exited the frame. The door creaked again, and the room was empty once more. The viewer counter dropped to 3. I checked my own connection. I was still connected, but apparently, I was no longer being counted as a viewer. Why? I waited again. Another 10 minutes. Nothing happened. I closed the tab and got back to my work. But that night, as I tried to sleep, I kept seeing that smile, that fixed stare directly into the camera. There was something about it that unsettled me in a way I couldn't articulate. The next night, I returned to the forum. The link was still there. Same title, same coordinates, viewer counter, 2. I clicked again. The same room, empty. I waited. This time, the door opened after only 3 minutes. A different person entered. A man, young, in his 20s, shaved head, tattoos on his arms. He wore a t-shirt that said something I couldn't read from that angle. He sat in the chair, looked at the camera, and said my name. "Hello, Quillen." The world stopped. It had to be a coincidence. Quillen isn't a common name, but it's not unique either. He could be talking to another Quillen, someone else who was watching. But then he added, "You're wondering how we know your name." My blood turned to ice. "It's easier than you think," the man continued, his voice monotone, as if reading from a script. "People think Tor makes them invisible, anonymous, but there are so many ways to identify someone. Browser fingerprints, WebRTC leaks, traffic correlation, and you, Quillen, weren't as careful as you thought." I jumped up from my chair so fast I nearly knocked it over. My hand went to the mouse, ready to close the browser, shut down the computer, yank the internet cable from the wall. But the man smiled. "Don't close the window. If you do, you'll lose your only chance to understand what's happening." I froze, the mouse hovering over the close button. "That's it," he said, nodding. "Good boy. Sit down. We have a lot to discuss." I shouldn't have done it. Every instinct screamed at me to close everything, format my hard drive, throw my computer into the Puget Sound. But the curiosity, that damned curiosity that had led me to that forum in the first place, kept me glued to the chair. "What is this?" I managed to say out loud, though I knew he couldn't hear me. There was no audio coming out of my computer, only in. But he responded anyway. "This is an experiment, a study on human behavior, specifically digital voyeurism and the illusion of privacy. You were selected as a test subject 3 days ago." 3 days. That was a day before I found the link. How? I started to ask, then stopped. He couldn't hear me. This had to be pre-recorded, a video designed to seem interactive. "How did we select you?" the man asked as if he'd read my mind. "Your browsing history was very informative. Freelancer, working from home. Lives alone. No significant relationships currently. Spends an average of 14 hours a day in front of screens. Psychological profile. Curious, skeptical, but also compulsive once something captures your interest." Every word was like a blow. Information only I should know, or information that could be deduced from my online behavior if someone was paying enough attention. "The link you found wasn't accidental," he continued. "It was placed specifically in that forum because we knew you'd find it. Your client requested research on dark web content. We predicted with an 87% probability that you'd search in the exact places where we planted the bait." My mouth was dry. "This is bullshit," I said out loud, though he still couldn't hear me. "This is just a psychological trick, generic info that could apply to anyone." The man on the screen tilted his head. "Do you really believe that, Quillen Morse, who lives in apartment 7B of the Cedar Creek building in Seattle? Quillen, who ordered Thai food 3 nights ago from the Bangkok Express restaurant at 8:47 p.m. Quillen, whose Netflix password is still his last name followed by his birth year, even though that violates every basic security convention." "Oh my God." "Want more?" he asked, now smiling. "Your mother, Reverie Morse, lives in Portland. You talk to her every Sunday at 3 p.m. Yesterday, you forgot to call her, and she sent you 3 text messages asking if you were okay. Your ex-girlfriend Tamsin, whom you broke up with 8 months ago, still checks your Instagram profile every 2 days, even though she blocked you everywhere. You're currently working on a project for Zenith Productions about—" "Stop," I shouted, though it was useless. The man stopped. He literally stopped mid-sentence, as if he could really hear me. He sat in silence for 5 full seconds. Then he nodded. "We understand this is disturbing. That's why the experiment is effective. Most people navigate life believing they have privacy, that their digital lives are separate from their physical ones. We demonstrate how false that belief is." "Who are you?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "That information will be revealed in Phase 3 of the experiment. For now, you only need to know this. We're watching, always. And as long as you keep watching this stream, we'll keep sharing interesting things with you." He stood from the chair. "Same time tomorrow, Quillen. We promise it'll be worth your time." He exited the frame. The room was empty. The viewer counter dropped to 1. Just me. I closed the browser, turned off my computer, sat in the darkness of my apartment trying to process what had just happened. Someone had hacked me, obviously. Someone had accessed my personal information, my accounts, maybe even my webcam. Why hadn't I put a damn sticker over it like everyone told me to? I should call the police, contact a cybersecurity expert, do something productive and rational. Instead, I stayed up all night, obsessively checking every account I had, changing every password, covering every camera in my apartment. My laptop, my phone, even the smart doorbell I never should have bought. But even as I did it, I knew it was too late. They already had what they needed. The question was, what did they really want? The next night, at exactly 11:47 p.m., how did they know my work schedule so precisely? My phone beeped. A notification. A message from an unknown number. "The stream is live. Aren't you going to tune in?" I'd promised myself I wouldn't. I'd promised myself I'd ignore this, report it, act like a rational adult. But I opened Tor, went to the forum. The link was there. Viewer counter 1. I clicked. The same room. But this time it wasn't empty. Someone was already sitting in the chair. It was a different woman. Younger, in her 20s. Purple-dyed hair, piercings in her nose and eyebrows. She looked directly at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. "Hello again, Quillen," she said. "We knew you'd come back. Curiosity is predictable, especially in someone like you." I said nothing, just watched. "Tonight, we're going to show you something different. Something that will demonstrate how deeply we've been watching you." She stood and exited the frame. For a moment, the room was empty. Then, something changed. The camera moved, or rather, the feed changed. I was no longer seeing the concrete room. I was seeing my own apartment, from inside. The image showed my living room from a high angle, probably from the smoke detector on the ceiling. When had they installed a camera there? I could see my sofa, my television, my coffee table with its collection of empty coffee mugs, and I could see myself, sitting at my desk, staring at my computer screen, with the blue light reflecting off my pale face. I was watching a live stream of myself watching the stream. I jumped from my chair as if I'd received an electric shock. I looked toward the smoke detector. From the floor, I couldn't see any camera, but I knew it was there. On the screen, I watched myself looking up. "Fascinating, isn't it?" came the woman's voice, though she was no longer in frame. "The experience of watching yourself being watched. Meta surveillance." I ran to my apartment door. I had to get out. I had to. "We don't suggest you leave," the voice said. "We have cameras in the hallway too. In the elevator. In the lobby. In the parking lot. Where would you go that we couldn't see you?" I stopped with my hand on the doorknob. "It's better if you return to your desk, Quillen. We have more to show you." I shouldn't have obeyed, but something in her tone, not threatening, just informative, made me hesitate. And in that hesitation, in that fatal pause, my curiosity overcame my fear once again. I returned to my desk. On the screen, I watched myself return. The feed changed again. Now it showed multiple angles of my apartment in a grid. 4, 6, 8 different cameras, each showing a different part of my private space. My bedroom, my bathroom, my kitchen, even my closet. "We've been watching for 3 weeks, the voice said, "even before we planted the link. We needed to establish your routine, understand your patterns. You know you talk to yourself constantly, right? It's one of your most endearing traits." I felt nausea rising in my throat. "For example, this morning, while you were making coffee, you said, 'Another day in paradise,' in that sarcastic tone you use. You say it almost every morning. It's like a personal mantra." It was true. I did. An unconscious habit I'd never thought anyone else would hear. "And last night, when you talked to your mother on the phone, you lied to her about dating someone. You said you'd met someone at a cafe. We could tell her the truth. That you haven't had a date in 8 months. That you spend your nights editing videos and browsing dark internet forums. What do you want?" I finally managed to say, my voice broken. The woman reappeared on screen, but this time she wasn't in the concrete room. She was somewhere with multiple monitors behind her, each showing different video feeds. Some I recognized. My apartment from various angles. Others showed places I didn't know. "We want you to understand something fundamental about the modern world," she said. "Privacy doesn't exist. Not really. Every device you own is a window through which you can be observed. Every service you use collects data on you. Every click, every search, every message, it all builds a profile so detailed that we can practically predict your actions before you take them." "But why me? Why do this?" She smiled. It wasn't a cruel smile. Somehow, that made it worse. "Because you responded to the initial test. Because your profile made you ideal. And because we needed to demonstrate that we could do it." Demonstrate to whom? Our clients, of course. The word chilled me. Clients. This wasn't just some psychopathic hacker doing this for fun. It was a business. "We offer a service," she continued, as if explaining something perfectly reasonable. Deep surveillance and profile building for corporations, government agencies, private individuals with the resources to pay. You're our demonstration, our case study. Look how much we can discover about a completely random target in just 3 weeks. This is illegal, I said, though the words sounded hollow even to me. Many things are illegal, but who's going to stop us? The police. With what evidence? All our servers are in jurisdictions that don't cooperate. Our identities are fragmented across dozens of countries. By the time any authority could trace us, we'll have vanished. I breathed deeply, trying to think. There had to be a way out. There had to be a way to... You're thinking about formatting your computer, she said, interrupting my thoughts. Getting rid of all your devices. Moving maybe. Changing your identity. How? Micro-expressions. Eye movement. Body language. We have software that analyzes all that in real time. We can practically read your mind, Quillen. I forced my face to stay neutral, though inside I was screaming. But here's the thing, she continued, leaning toward her camera. You don't need to do any of that, because your participation in this is ending. The demonstration project completes tonight. Tomorrow, all the cameras will be removed. All the collected data will be presented to our potential clients, and then you'll be free. Why should I believe you? Because there's no gain in keeping you in our database longer than necessary. You're useful as a demonstration, but after that, you're just a risk. The longer we keep you under surveillance, the greater the chance of exposure. So yes, we'll release you. You'll become an anecdote. Remember that Seattle editor we stalked for a month? That's what you'll be. It didn't sound reassuring. But before we finish, she said, we want to show you one last thing. Something we believe you'll find enlightening. The feed changed again. This time it showed a recording. The timestamp said it was from 2 weeks ago. It was me, in my apartment, working late at night. Nothing unusual. Just me editing video, drinking coffee, occasionally checking my phone. Look at the timestamp, she said. 11:47. The same time the live stream always started. In the recording, my phone beeped. A notification. I watched myself look at it, frown slightly, then ignore it and return to work. Do you know what that notification was? She asked. I didn't. I got dozens of notifications a day. It was a message from an unknown number. It said, "We know what you did." Nothing more. Just that. A shiver ran down my spine. I vaguely remembered that message. I'd assumed it was spam, one of those random scam texts everyone gets. You never responded. You didn't even think twice, but we knew you'd seen the message. And we knew your lack of reaction was informative in itself. It told us you had nothing significant to hide, that you hadn't done anything that made you feel guilty enough to panic at a vague message like that. The recording continued. It showed me over the next 2 weeks, fragments of my life edited together, eating alone, working alone, sleeping alone, an existence so monotonous and predictable that even watching it time-lapse was depressing. This is your life, Quillen, she said softly. No mystery, no dark secrets, just routine, just loneliness, just the illusion of privacy in an existence no one else is paying attention to anyway. The words hurt more than they should have. So, what's the real horror here, she asked. That we watched you, or that without our watching, your life passes completely unnoticed? I wanted to argue. I wanted to say I had friends, family, a life beyond these 4 walls. But as I watched the fragments of my life edited together, I couldn't deny the truth of her words. When we disappear tomorrow, she continued, you'll return to your normal life. But now you'll always know, at any moment, you could be being watched. Every security camera on the street, every smart TV, every connected device, any of them could be a pair of eyes looking at you. You'll live with that paranoia. That will be our gift to you, the permanent awareness of how truly vulnerable you are. The feed changed one last time, back to the original concrete room, empty except for the chair, and on the chair there was something new, a manila envelope. "If you want real answers," the voice said, "if you want to know exactly who we are, what we do, and how we selected you, come to the original coordinates. The building will be abandoned. No one will stop you. The envelope contains everything. But ask yourself this: do you really want to know, or is it better to live with the uncertainty?" The screen went black. The stream had ended. I tried to refresh. The link was dead. I went to the forum. The post had been deleted. It was as if it had never existed. I spent the next 3 days in a state of extreme paranoia. I dismantled every device in my apartment looking for cameras. I found 2. One in the smoke detector, as I'd suspected, and another inside my internet router. Both were commercial devices that could be bought online for less than $100. There was no way to trace them to a specific buyer. I hired a cybersecurity specialist who confirmed my computer had been compromised, probably through malware I'd unknowingly downloaded from one of the dark websites I'd visited for my research. My phone too. Basically, all my devices had been turned into surveillance tools. But the most terrifying thing was what we didn't find. No evidence of who had done this. No digital trail beyond the basic malware. As if they were ghosts. For days, I wrestled with myself about going to the coordinates. Part of me needed answers. Needed to understand who they were, why they'd really chosen me, what they wanted to demonstrate. But another part of me, the saner part, knew going would be stupid. That it was probably just another layer of the experiment. Can curiosity overcome fear even after such a clear demonstration of vulnerability? In the end, I didn't go. But I couldn't let it go completely either. I hired a private investigator to check out the building in the Bronx. He reported it was indeed abandoned, but the space corresponding to the stream room was empty. No chair, no camera, no envelope. Either it had never been there, or they'd cleaned it out before my investigator arrived. I'll probably never know the truth. What I do know is this: 3 months later, I still cover every camera. I still obsessively check my apartment for new devices. I still wake up in the middle of the night convinced someone is watching me. I've stopped working as a video editor. I can't look at screens for hours without feeling that tingle on the back of my neck, that primitive certainty that I'm prey, not hunter, in the digital ecosystem. Sometimes I search for the forum again, even though I know the link won't return. Part of me wants it to, wants answers, wants closure. But the majority of me knows the closure they gave me is the only one I'll get. The permanent understanding that I'm never truly alone. That privacy is an illusion we only maintain because most people don't have the resources or interest to violate yours. But for those who do have those resources, for those who do have that interest, you're completely, terrifyingly vulnerable. And the most horrible part, the truth that keeps me awake at night, is this. She was probably telling the truth. The cameras were probably all removed. They're probably not watching me anymore. But I can never be sure. And that uncertainty is more unbearable than any real surveillance could be. Because every time I turn on my computer, every time I pick up my phone, every time I pass a security camera on the street, I wonder, is this the time? Are they back? Am I being watched right now? And I'll never know the answer. That's the real prison they built. Not of cameras and malware, but of doubt, of fear, of the impossibility of ever feeling completely alone in your own private space again. Yesterday, I received a message from an unknown number. It just said, "Hello again, Quillen." I deleted the message immediately, blocked the number, told myself it was just spam, just coincidence. But last night, at 11:47 p.m., my computer beeped. A notification that someone had tried to access my webcam. The attempt was blocked. My new security software stopped it. But someone had tried. And that means either they never left, or they've come back. And this time, I don't even know if I want to find out which. Because in the end, maybe that woman was right. Maybe the real horror isn't being watched. It's living in a world where you always could be, and you'll never know for sure. Where every moment of your life exists in a state of superposition, observed and unobserved simultaneously, until something collapses the probability one way or the other. And by the time you discover they were watching, it's already too late for it to matter. I moved from Seattle last week. New apartment, new city, new digital identity. But while packing, I found something in the back of my closet. Something I didn't remember putting there. A manila envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, no text, just a printed image. It was a photo of me, taken from above, in my new apartment, the one I'd just moved into 3 days ago, the one no one except me knew I'd rented. I was sitting at my new desk, in my new room, looking at my new laptop, and on the screen of that laptop, barely visible but unmistakably clear, was me writing this very thing, this confession, this testimony, looking at the photo, watching myself write about finding the photo, creating an infinite loop of observation and self-observation that can never be resolved. That's the image I can't get out of my mind, because it means that while I'm writing this, while I'm documenting what happened to me, while I desperately try to process my trauma by sharing it with the world, they're watching, reading every word as I write it, watching my face as I process the horror of realizing this never ended, that it never will end. And the question I can't answer, the one that will destroy me if I think about it too much, is, did they write this story? Did they program every action, every decision, every word? Or do I still have some free will in this experiment? I don't know, and that's exactly how they planned it. Viewer count, 1, always just 1, always just me, watching and being watched, forever. My name is Elwyn Hargrove, and tonight, sitting on the back porch of my little house on the outskirts of Asheville, North Carolina, with the humid autumn air clinging to my skin like a second layer of guilt, I relive the year that nearly destroyed me. It's October of 2024, and the wind whispers through the pines as if trying to tell me secrets I don't want to hear. But the silence of my house, empty since I sold everything I didn't need to pay off debts, forces me to confront it. It started in the summer of 2023 when the well of my life dried up completely and desperation pushed me into the shadows of the net. I was 34 years old then, single after a divorce that left me with emotional scars and a student loan that devoured my salary as a substitute teacher at a rural school in the Appalachians. My parents had died in a car accident 5 years earlier, leaving only debts and a ruined farm that I sold for a pittance. My friends, few, scattered by life like leaves in the wind, had drifted away, blaming me for my eternal negativity. So one July night, with the fan humming uselessly against the suffocating heat that made my sweat-soaked blouse stick to my back, I opened my laptop in the kitchen lit by a yellowish bulb and searched for quick ways to make money online. The results were the usual: paid surveys that yielded pennies, freelancing on saturated sites where I competed with the whole world. But at the bottom of a Quora page, an anonymous comment caught my eye. If you're truly desperate, go into the deep web. There are forums that pay for simple favors. Don't ask, just do it. But be careful. Once you enter, you don't come out the same. My heart pounded with an erratic pulse, a mix of fear and that masochistic curiosity that had always gotten me into trouble. Like when as a child, I sneaked into the abandoned farm basement to explore and ended up crying from splinter scratches. I downloaded Tor that same night, the installer crawling across the screen like a digital worm, and set up a VPN following the instructions from a blurry tutorial. My IP became a ghost, my identity a veil of anonymous nicks. Silver Echo 87. I entered trembling, the cursor hesitating over links promising hidden markets and exclusive opportunities. The first site was a labyrinth of cryptocurrencies and drugs, but I followed a buried thread in a forum called Whispersnet, accessible only after solving a logic puzzle captcha that took me hours. There, in a subsection titled Gigs for the Desperate, I found the ad that would change everything. Lucrative opportunities, simple favors for immediate payment, no questions. Bitcoin sent directly to your wallet. First gig, $500 for delivering an envelope. Register with Nick and wallet. Anonymity guaranteed. The economic need was an animal gnawing at my insides. My bank account was in the red. The landlord, a grumpy old man named Thaddeus Quill, had given me a 1-week ultimatum, and the supermarket was a luxury I postponed with instant ramen that tasted like damp cardboard. $500 was food for a month, maybe the rent payment. It's just an envelope, I told myself, typing my nick and the address of a wallet I created in minutes, my heart hammering in my ribs as if it knew I was signing a pact with shadows. The response came in seconds. A private message from Handler 0. Welcome, Silver Echo. Envelope attached at GPS coordinates 35.5951 degrees north, 82.5515 degrees west. Delivery at midnight. Confirmation photo required. Payment upon completion. Remember, don't open the envelope. Don't talk to anyone. Delete the message after. The coordinates pointed to a residential neighborhood on the outskirts of Asheville, not far from my house. A neighborhood of decaying Victorian houses with porches that creaked under the rain. I hesitated, sweat beading on my forehead, as the fan groaned like a lament, but the emptiness in my fridge was stronger than the fear. I printed the envelope, a simple manila envelope, unmarked, that arrived anonymously by mail 2 days later, slipped under my door like a silent snake. And that midnight, with the clock showing 11:58 on my dashboard, I drove down secondary roads where the headlights cut through the fog like knives. The air smelled of damp pine and churned earth, and my mind buzzed with doubts. What was inside? Dirty money, drugs, a threat. I parked a block away, the engine dying with a sigh that sounded like resignation, and walked with the envelope clutched to my chest, my heartbeat sinking with the crunch of dry leaves under my worn sneakers. The house was a Victorian monster, with dark windows staring at me like blind eyes, the porch lit by a yellow bulb that flickered like an irregular pulse. I climbed the steps on jelly legs, the air heavy with the smell of mold and something metallic, blood perhaps, or just my overactive imagination, and left the envelope on the threadbare entry rug, the dull thud echoing in my skull like a hammer blow. I backed away, panic crawling up my spine like ants, and pulled out my phone for the photo, the innocent envelope under the dim light, my elongated shadow falling over it like an accusation. I sent the image to Handler 0, the message fracturing into the digital ether, and ran back to the car, tears stinging my eyes as I drove home, the wind howling like a chorus of ignored warnings. The payment arrived at 12:05, $500 in bitcoins, converted to fresh euros in my bank account, which made me sob with relief in the shower, the hot water washing away the cold sweat from my skin, but not the knot in my stomach, that intuition that I'd crossed an invisible line, a threshold where innocence dissolves into complicity. The following days were a false balm, the money buying real groceries, crisp, apples, fresh bread that didn't taste like cardboard, and paying Thaddeus Quill with a smile that hid my racing pulse. But the deep web called to me like a vice, the Whispersnet forum a magnet I couldn't resist. More gigs available, announced Handler 0 in a private message, and there it was, the second one. $1,000 for taking a specific photo. Location: Cafe Luna in downtown Asheville. Target: woman with red hair, approx. 40 years old, alone with a briefcase. Close-up photo, without her seeing you. Payment upon upload. The money was tempting, 2 months' rent, and the task seemed harmless. Just a photo, an amateur paparazzi. But the terror began to seep into my dreams. Visions of the woman with the briefcase staring at me with accusing eyes. Her face dissolving into mine as Handler Zero whispered from the darkness, "Good job, Silver Echo. Soon you'll be the photo." I woke sweating, the dawn filtering through the ragged curtains like accusing fingers, and decided to do it. The economic need a whip lashing me forward. The Café Luna was a bohemian nook in the heart of Asheville, with outdoor tables under faded awnings and the aroma of espresso and jasmine floating in the tourist-laden air. I arrived early, my camera hidden in an inconspicuous backpack, an old Canon I'd bought at a secondhand store for $20, and sat at a table near the window, pretending to read a book of Sylvia Plath poetry that I didn't fully understand. The woman entered at 2:15, her red hair like flames cascading in waves over a gray coat that smelled of damp wool as she brushed past me, the black briefcase hanging from her shoulder like an invisible burden. She was beautiful in a fragile way, with dark circles under her eyes speaking of sleepless nights and lips pressed into a line of constant worry. She ordered a latte with cinnamon, her voice a low murmur that I captured with my phone's microphone, and sat alone, pulling papers from the briefcase. Legal documents, perhaps, with red stamps screaming divorce or bankruptcy. My pulse quickened, sweat beading on my neck as I brought the camera closer, the zoom trembling in my hands, focusing on her face, the fine wrinkles around her eyes, the nervous tick in her jaw, the way she bit her lower lip as if holding back a sob. Click. The photo taken, a mental flash that made me feel like a predator, my shadow falling over her table like a threat. She turned for an instant, her green eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that froze my blood. Had she seen me? Did she know? And I ran out, the book falling from my lap in a flutter of pages, the coffee spilling on the floor like diluted blood. In the car, I sent the photo with fingers that wouldn't stop shaking, the message fracturing. Completed. Target, Isadora Finn. The payment arrived in minutes, $1,000 transferred like a poisonous balm. But that night, in my bed with the sheets tangled around my legs like ropes, the terror overwhelmed me. Who was Isadora Finn? Why a photo of her? I imagined Handler Zero in a dark room, the image projected on a stained wall, his fingers typing orders as he planned something worse, maybe sending her the briefcase, or using her as bait for a darker favor. I cried until dawn, panic a knot in my throat that wouldn't loosen, but the money in my account was real, a hook that kept me tethered. The third gig arrived a week later, when the relief of the payment had evaporated into bills, and the landlord, Thaddeus Quill, had looked at me with narrowed eyes, muttering, "No more extensions, LON." Handler Zero's message was more direct. $2,000 for following a target for 24 hours. Initial location, train station in Biltmore Village. Target, man of 50 years, blue suit, fedora hat. Record movements, photos every hour. Don't let yourself be seen. Payment upon completion. $2,000 was freedom, paying the rent, buying a used car that wouldn't break down on the mountain roads, but the task smelled of danger, a deeper step into the abyss. I hesitated for 3 days, walking the trails of the Blue Ridge Parkway where the wind howled through the oaks like a chorus of lost souls, my mind buzzing with visions of Isadora Finn receiving a threat based on my photo, her life crumbling in accelerated divorces or custody losses. But the need was a monster roaring in my empty stomach, and at dawn on the 4th day, I put on a loose coat, sunglasses, and a hat that hid my face, driving to Biltmore Village with a churning stomach. The station was a relic of the Gilded Age, with splintered wooden platforms and benches creaking under the weight of weary travelers, the air heavy with the smoke of antique locomotives and the smell of rusted iron. The man arrived at 8:47, his blue suit impeccable, contrasting with the fedora hat, casting shadows over his weathered face, a thin scar crossing his left cheek like a white lightning bolt. He was called, I heard it in a phone call I intercepted with my recording phone, Caspian Rook, his deep voice murmuring, "Yes, the package is on its way. I won't fail." I followed him from a distance, my heart a drum of panic in my chest, hiding behind pillars and crowds of tourists, smelling of sunscreen and pretensions. I took the first photo on the platform, his profile sharp against the whistling train like a lament. The fedora tilted, revealing eyes sunken in eternal dark circles. He walked to a nearby cafe, ordering a black coffee without sugar, his fingers drumming on the table as if counting seconds in a countdown. And I sat 3 tables back, my camera hidden in a shopping bag, the zoom focusing on the tension in his jaw, the way he scanned the room like a cornered animal. The terror began to seep in then, a cold drip on my neck. What if he saw me? What if Caspian Rook was like me, a pawn in a larger game, following orders that would lead him to ruin? I followed him to a bench in an adjacent park, where he sat reading a newspaper. The Asheville Citizen-Times, open to a page on local crimes, his eyes jumping lines as if searching for his own name. And I took the second photo, the sun filtering through the leaves to cast dancing shadows on his face, making him look like a specter. The day stretched into a surveillance nightmare. I saw him enter a dusty bookstore downtown, buying a book of dark poetry. Edgar Allan Poe, the title The Telltale Heart, etched in my mind like an omen, and photographed him from the window, my breath fogging the glass as I imagined the beating heart under the floor was mine, betraying me to Handler Zero. He lunched alone at a Greek diner, chewing gyros with deliberate slowness that spoke of contained nausea, his eyes fixed on the door as if expecting pursuers. And I ate a cold sandwich in the car, my stomach clenched by panic that made me sweat profusely, drops sliding down my back like accusing fingers. The afternoon took him to a cheap motel on the outskirts, the Blue Moon Inn, with flickering neons promising vacancies in blood-red letters. Where he checked in under a false name, I heard it at the reception, Jasper Crow, and went up to room 13, the door closing with a click that echoed in my skull like a final bolt. I waited in the parking lot, the car an oven of anxiety where the air thickened with the smell of my own fear. And at 6:17, he emerged with a black backpack he hadn't had before, heading to a dive bar called the Rusty Nail, where he drank whiskey alone, his shoulders hunched as if carrying the weight of the world. The photo from that hour captured his face, illuminated by the bar's dim light, unshed tears gleaming in his eyes, the scar on his cheek twisting like a sardonic smile. Night fell like a black veil, and I followed him on foot through alleys where street lamps buzzed like dying insects, the wind carrying echoes of drunken laughter and distant sirens. He entered an abandoned building, an old warehouse with graffiti proclaiming "The Devil Watches You," and I waited outside, my heart pounding in my ears as I imagined what he was doing there, delivering a package like me, taking a photo that would destroy a life. At 11:43, he exited with empty hands, his face ashen under the moon, and I followed him back to the motel, my shadow merging with his in a macabre dance of paranoia. The last photo, at midnight, showed him sleeping in the rumpled bed, the half-open window letting in the smoke from his extinguished cigarette, his chest rising and falling in agitated breaths that spoke of living nightmares. I sent the images to Handler Zero from the car, my fingers slipping on the screen from sweat, and the payment arrived instantly, $2,000 that made me cry with equal parts relief and terror. But that night, in my bed with sheets soaked in cold sweat, the horror consumed me. Had I condemned Caspian Rook? Was he the next inner, the chain, a pawn following someone else until the cycle closed on me? The fourth gig arrived like a whisper in my inbox 2 weeks later, when the money from the third had evaporated into debts, and the landlord Thaddeus Quill had pounded on my door with a fist that echoed like a verdict. 1 week, Elowen, or you call the movers. Handler Zero was succinct. $5,000 for a final favor. Pick up a package from locker 47 at the Greyhound station. Deliver to attached coordinates. Include a personal note. The game ends when the pawn becomes king. Payment upon confirmation. $5,000 was salvation. Paying everything, starting over. Maybe moving to a city where the past didn't hound me like a bloodhound. But the task smelled of closure. A noose tightening around my neck. The package in the locker was a thick envelope, sealed with red wax that crackled under my trembling nails, and the coordinates pointed to an abandoned park in the mountains, a place called Raven's Hollow, where locals whispered stories of suicides hanging from century-old oaks. I drove at dusk, the sun sinking into a purple twilight that stained the trees with blood, my mind a whirlwind of flashes. Isadora Fenn receiving a threat based on my photo, her life crumbling in rushed divorces or custody losses. Caspian Rook, followed by me, now perhaps following another, his tilted fedora hiding eyes that saw ghosts in every shadow. The park was a cemetery of dry leaves and broken benches, the air heavy with the smell of damp earth and sweet decay. And I walked the central path with the envelope clutched to my chest, the wind whispering through the trunks like conspiratorial voices. A figure waited in the central clearing, a hooded man, short and stocky, with black gloves that creaked as he extended his hand, and the exchange was silent. The envelope for a wad of bills that weighed like lead in my pocket. His eyes, hidden in the hood's shadow, boring into mine for an eternal second, a recognition that froze my blood. "The game ends when the pawn becomes king," I read aloud, my voice a broken thread lost in the wind, and he nodded, a crooked smile peeking from under the hood, before vanishing among the trees like smoke. I ran to the car, panic roaring in my ears, and sent the confirmation to Handler Zero, the payment arriving like a poison prize. But that night, in my house with all the lights on, bulbs buzzing like mad wasps, the terror fully overwhelmed me. What had I delivered? Documents for a murder? Photos that would destroy lives? I curled up on the sofa, the blanket around my shoulders, like a useless shield, and cried until dawn painted the sky gray. Sleep coming in fragments, where Handler Zero whispered to me, "Soon, Silver Echo, you'll be the king, or the sacrifice." The final message arrived at dawn the next day, my phone vibrating on the nightstand like a trapped insect, the sound piercing my insomnia-aching skull. Handler Zero, "Congratulations, Silver Echo. You've completed the favors. The final contract involves your own delivery, envelope at your door. Head to the coordinates, your house, payment, eternal freedom." The world stopped, the air freezing in my lungs as I staggered up, leaden legs carrying me to the hallway, where a manila envelope lay on the floor, slipped under the door like a sentence. I opened it with fingers that felt nothing, the paper crackling like dry bones, and inside, a photo of me, taken from the window of my own kitchen, my gaunt face illuminated by the laptop screen, eyes sunken in dark circles, mouth open in a silent scream of doubt. Below, a note in Handler Zero's angular handwriting. "The pawn was always the king. You've delivered the envelopes, the photos, the surveillance. Now we deliver your life. The game ends with you. Open the door. We are the ones who always watch." The horror was an abyss opening under my feet, the floor tilting in vertigo that brought me to my knees, the envelope falling from my hands like a dead leaf. How? When? The coordinates were my address, my house the final destination, and in that instant, everything clicked. The envelope I delivered contained my initial photo, taken by someone following me. The woman at the cafe was a distraction, Caspian Rook a decoy to keep me occupied while they closed in. Handler Zero wasn't a user. It was a network, a web of manipulation where I was the fly, each gig a thread binding me tighter, the progressive control a poison injected drop by drop. Hot tears coursed down my face, panic roaring in my ears as I crawled to the door, the bolt turning with a click that sounded like a gunshot. And I opened it, the hallway empty but charged with invisible presences, shadows in the corners, the echo of footsteps that weren't mine. I ran to the window, the curtains tearing in my frantic hands, and saw a black car parked across the street, headlights off but engine running, a silhouette in the driver's seat watching me with the calm of a predator who knows his prey won't escape. I screamed then, a primal howl that shattered the house's silence, and called the police with fingers slipping on the screen, stammering, "They're watching me. They manipulated me. It's a network. Please come." The officers arrived half an hour later, sirens howling like wolves in the night, and searched the house, finding fingerprints on my laptop that weren't mine, a GPS tracker in my car I didn't remember installing, and the initial envelope, the one I delivered, returned to my mailbox with a postscript. "Thanks for the game, Silver Echo. The king has fallen." Handler Zero was traced to an international network of scammers and blackmailers, but they never caught them all. They were ghosts, manipulators, who used deep web forms to weave networks of psychological control, turning the desperate into pawns who delivered themselves. The terror not in blows, but in the slow erosion of the will, the discovery that your own life was the final prize. Today, 2 years later, I live in a remote cabin in the Appalachian Mountains under a false name. Elowin became Leora Voss, teaching online to children I'll never meet in person. My laptop, a double-edged weapon I use only for the essentials. The Whispersnet forum is a memory that wakes me sweating, my heart pounding like in that final night. And sometimes, in the forest quiet, where owls hoot like echoes of Handler Zero, I feel eyes in the shadows, a black car on the gravel road. I saved my life by closing the door in time, but the control they exerted, progressive, insidious, weaving my paranoia until I delivered myself, left me marked, a pawn who saw the entire board and swore never to play again. But on stormy nights, when the wind howls like drowned laughter, I wonder if the game really ended, or if I just changed boards, waiting for the next message to whisper, "Your own delivery." My name is Hollis Brennan, and I am 22 years old. 6 months ago, I made the biggest mistake of my life, a mistake that cost me all sense of privacy, security, and autonomy. Now I live knowing that every moment, every second of wakefulness, every hour of vulnerable sleep is watched by eyes I have never seen but know are there. Always there. My therapist says that writing about the trauma helps, but how do you write about something that is still ongoing? Because it hasn't ended. It will never end. But here I am trying to articulate the nightmare that began with a simple need for money and ended with the complete destruction of any sense of autonomy. It was February. A final year college student at the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis, majoring in sociology with no clear direction, student debt piling up like snow in a Minnesota winter. My parents couldn't help, a working-class family that had already sacrificed too much to send me to university. I worked part-time at the campus cafeteria, but it barely covered the rent for my studio apartment and ramen meals. One night, desperate, searching for freelance jobs on dark corners of the internet, places where legality is gray but the pay is quick, I found something. Not on the surface web. On Tor, browsing forums for quick gigs, I saw a post. Volunteers needed. Sleep study. $500 per week. Anonymous. Remote work. $500 per week. $2,000 a month. More than I made at the cafeteria. And anonymous meant no taxes, no paperwork. Cash or cryptocurrency. The post was simple. The Somnus Institute seeks volunteers for a longitudinal study of sleep patterns. Requirements: ages 18 to 25, sleeps alone, willing to record during designated periods. Generous compensation. Contact: Somnus does research. Domain.onion. I should have seen it as a red flag. An institute with no recognizable name. Contact on a .onion domain. Payment offer on a deep web forum. But desperation clouds judgment. $500 for it. Recording myself sleeping. Universities do sleep studies all the time. Why not do it from home and make money? I sent the email that night. The response came in 24 hours. Automated at first. Thank you for your interest. Please complete the attached questionnaire to determine eligibility. The questionnaire was extensive. Age, weight, height, medical conditions, medications, typical sleep routine. Then more personal questions. Do you live alone? Do you share a room? Are there security cameras in your building? Does your family know exactly where you live? The last one seemed strange, but I answered honestly. Yes, I lived alone. No, there were no security cameras in my old building. Yes, my family knew my address but rarely visited. They were 3 hours away in a small town. 3 days later, the response. Congratulations, Hollis. You have been selected for Project Morpheus. Initial duration, 7 nights. Compensation, $500 upon completion. Setup instructions will be sent to your physical address. Confirm participation by replying with, I accept participation. I should have investigated more. Searched for Somnus Institute or Project Morpheus. Nothing came up in normal searches. That should have stopped me, but $500. 7 nights of doing what I already did anyway, sleep. I replied, I accept participation. 2 days later, the package arrived. A plain brown cardboard box with no return address, just my address. Inside, a high-definition webcam, adjustable mount, long USB cable, printed instructions on thick paper, and a USB drive. The instructions were meticulous. Project Morpheus, recording protocol. Install camera in position that captures the entire bed. Front view preferred. Insert USB drive into computer. Run software, morpheuscapture.exe. Software will activate camera automatically every night at 11 p.m. Recording continues until 7 a.m. Do not view the recordings. Software encrypts and uploads them automatically. Maintain normal sleep routine. Do not modify camera settings. Complete 7 consecutive nights. Upon completion, $500 will be transferred via agreed method, Bitcoin provided. Important. Software must remain installed to complete protocol. Any interruption will result in disqualification without compensation. For questions, contact Somnus Jersey Research, domain.onion. Simple, clear, and apparently legitimate in the context of a sleep study. I installed everything that afternoon. Camera in the corner of my room, perfect angle on my twin bed. Software on my old laptop. It installed without issues. A discrete icon in the taskbar. A small closed eye. First night. 11 p.m. The icon changed to an open eye. The small green light on the camera turned on. I lay down, uncomfortable at first. Being watched, even knowing it was for science, felt invasive, but fatigue won out. I slept. I woke at 7 a.m. Green light off. Icon back to closed eye. The software had worked exactly as promised. No notifications, no problems. The day went on normally. Nights 2, 3, 4, the same. The routine became normal. Eventually, I forgot the camera was there. Just another piece of furniture in my small room. Night 5 was different. I woke at 3 a.m. I don't know why. Something pulled me from sleep. I looked toward the camera. Green light on. Normal. But I felt something. Like being watched more intensely. Not just recorded, but watched. Actively. I shook my head. Paranoia, I told myself. I went back to sleep. Night 6. I woke again. This time at 2:30 a.m. and I noticed something. My laptop, which I always left on the desk with the screen off, had a faint light emanating from it, as if it was on but in dark mode. I got up, walked over to it. The screen showed the Morpheus capture software, but not just the simple recording interface. There was an open window I didn't remember seeing during installation. It displayed real-time statistics. Heart rate, 68 BPM, movement, minimal, sleep phase, N2, active viewers, 1. Active viewers, my stomach contracted. Viewers, someone was watching live. I thought the recordings were uploaded later, to be analyzed by researchers afterward. But active viewers implied real-time transmission. I clicked on the window, trying to see more details. It closed immediately. The software returned to the simple interface. I searched in settings, program files, nothing, designed to hide its true functionality. Should I have uninstalled everything right then? Yes, absolutely. But one night was left. One more night, and I'd get the $500 I desperately needed. Just one more night, I told myself. Then I'd delete everything and forget this. Night 7. The last one. I lay down tense, hyper-aware of the camera, but eventually sleep came. When I woke at 7 a.m., I felt relief. Done. 7 full nights. I checked the software. New message. Protocol completed. Payment processing. Await confirmation in 24 to 48 hours. Do not uninstall software until confirmation received. I waited. 2 days. Nothing. Third day, email. Compensation sent. Verify wallet. Thank you for participating in Project Morpheus. Your contribution is invaluable. I checked my Bitcoin wallet. Sure enough, $500 in BTC. They had paid. Immense relief. It had been worth it. Strange, yes, but legitimate in the end. I went to uninstall the software, but something stopped me. Another email, arriving minutes after the first. Hollis, we have reviewed your data. You are an ideal candidate for Phase 2. Increased compensation, $1,000 per week. Duration, indefinite. Interested, $1,000 per week, $4,000 a month. That would cover everything: rent, food, debt, with surplus. My final semester of university. Just a few more months until I graduated. After that, I could quit this and get a real job. What are the terms? I replied. Same protocol, camera active every night, but now with periodic check-ins during the day. Software will monitor to ensure compliance. Weekly payment as long as you comply. Accept or decline. Offer expires in 24 hours. Check-ins during the day. What did that mean? Would the camera turn on randomly? They didn't specify, but $1,000. I accept, I replied. Fatal error number 2. The first week of Phase 2 was similar. Camera active at night, but occasionally during the day, the green light would blink briefly. 5 seconds. 10. Never more than 30. Check-ins, I assumed. Verifying I was there, that I was still participating. But in the second week, the check-ins increased. Not just brief blinks. The green light stayed on for minutes, hours, while I studied, while I ate, while I changed clothes. I stood in front of the camera one afternoon. What are you doing? The check-ins were supposed to be brief. No response. Just relentless green light. That night, email. Hollis, compliance requires more frequent monitoring. Do not interfere. Compensation continues only with total cooperation. How frequent is more frequent? This goes beyond the original agreement. Agreement is flexible according to study needs. Uninstalling software or covering camera will result in immediate termination and forfeiture of future payments. Additionally, breach of contract has consequences. Review terms you accepted. Terms. I didn't remember reading formal terms, just instructions. I searched my emails. An attachment I'd overlooked in the first email. Terms and conditions.pdf. I opened it finally. Dense legal language. Pages of it. But specific clauses stood out. Participant agrees to continuous monitoring at the discretion of the Somnus Institute during the duration of participation. Participation is voluntary, but once Phase 2 is initiated, early termination requires 30 days notice. Violation of protocol, including interference with equipment, public discussion of project, or non-compliance, results in a financial penalty of $10,000 and possible legal action. $10,000. I didn't have that. Never could pay it. And possible legal action was a vague but terrifying threat. I was trapped by my own greed, my own need. I'd signed, metaphorically, a contract that bound me to constant observation under threat of financial ruin. In the third week, monitoring became 24/7. The green light never went off. Waking up, showering. Yes, I'd moved the laptop to the bathroom by accident one day, and the webcam had range. Eating, studying, sleeping, all observed. I became paranoid. I'd cover the camera with a shirt when changing. Immediate email. Hollis, do not obstruct the camera. Final warning. It said it as if they were watching me in real time, responding instantly. Someone was on the other side. Not automated software. Real person, real people, watching. Then came the 8th night after starting phase 2. I woke at 4 a.m. with the sensation of being watched intensely. I looked toward my laptop on the desk. The screen was on, not dim, bright, and on it, a video transmission. But it wasn't my feed. It was another angle of me, in my bed, from a different direction. I sat up abruptly. Another camera? No. I waited. There was no other physical camera. Then I saw it. In the corner of the transmission, in a small picture-in-picture screen, another image. Darkroom, chair, and a silhouette sitting in it, watching me in real time through their own screen. I could see their outline. No face, too dark. But posture, motionless, watching. And then text appeared on my screen, superimposed over the transmission. Hello, Hollis. We no longer need your recordings. The observation is now live, always live. My blood froze. I jumped up, ran to the laptop, tried to close the software. It didn't respond. I forced a shutdown by pressing the power button. The laptop turned off. I breathed. Then my phone, which was charging by the bed, lit up. Notification from an unknown number. Turning off devices won't protect you, Hollis. We have access to all of them. Laptop, phone, even the microphone in your headphones. We've been watching you completely for weeks. Not just at night, all the time. Second message. And now new rules. Keep the camera on, always. If you turn it off, if you cover the lens, if you try to uninstall our software, we'll have to visit you in person. Third, we know your address, obviously. We know your routine. We know when you're alone. You won't want us to come, because if we do, it won't be remote observation anymore. It will be direct observation. We'll take you to a place where the cameras never turn off, where there is no privacy, ever. A room, 4 walls, cameras in every angle, filming you 24/7, eating, sleeping, using the bathroom, everything, for an audience that pays very well for this kind of content. Fourth message. So keep your camera on, Hollis, live your normal life, and we'll keep watching. It's much better than the alternative, right? The terror was absolute. It wasn't a sleep study. It was a voyeurism operation. They were selling access to my private life to who? Perverts, sadists, people who paid to watch a stranger's real life 24 hours a day. And now they were threatening me with kidnapping, with perpetual imprisonment under constant surveillance, like a forced reality show for a sinister audience. I called the police. An officer came, took my statement. I showed emails, messages. Do you have proof of these people's identity, addresses, names? No. Just emails on a onion domain. Phone numbers probably virtual. Have you been physically threatened? Technically, no. Just implication of threat. Have they asked you to do anything illegal? No. Just to be observed. Which, legally gray if I'd consented initially. Mr. Brennan, this is cyberstalking, but without identifying the perpetrators, there's little we can do. I suggest uninstall everything, destroy the webcam, format your devices, change your number, and consider moving temporarily if you fear for your safety. I tried to follow the advice. I uninstalled the software. Or tried to. It wouldn't uninstall. It was integrated into the operating system in a way that removal attempts failed. I formatted the laptop completely. Reinstalled the operating system from scratch. Clean, no trace of the software. For 2 days, I felt safe. No green light. No active camera. No observation. Then the messages started. On my newly configured phone with a new number. How did they get it? It didn't matter. The messages were clear. Hollis, this is disappointing. We gave you options. You chose the hard one. You have 48 hours to reinstall the software and reactivate your camera, or we come for you. Don't think moving will help. We track you. We know where you buy food, where you go to classes, where you sleep now. We're closer than you think. And then photos of me that day, leaving my apartment, walking to campus, in the cafeteria, taken from angles indicating close physical surveillance. Someone had been following me, photographing, proving their threat. The panic was suffocating. I contacted the FBI, cybercrime divisions, filed reports. They sent investigators. But tracking deep web operators is nearly impossible without international cooperation. They use servers in multiple countries, heavy encryption, untraceable cryptocurrencies. The investigations would take months, years maybe. I didn't have months. I had 48 hours, less now. I considered fleeing, going back to my parents. But the next message, your family in town, full address. It would be a shame to involve them. Let's keep this between us, Hollis. They knew where my parents lived. Clear implication. If I resisted, if I involved others, they'd expand their surveillance, or worse. At 42 hours, broken and terrified, I reinstalled the software, connected the webcam, turned it on. Green light. Immediate message on screen. Good decision, Hollis. Welcome back. Your audience missed you. Audience. Confirming my worst suspicions. This was entertainment for them. I was content. Since then, 4 months ago, the camera never turns off. I sleep under observation, eat under observation, study, cry, exist under observation. I've tried covering the camera occasionally. Immediately, threatening messages. Don't make us come, Hollis. Enough to make me remove the obstruction. I graduated last month. I didn't attend the ceremony. I couldn't. Too many people, too much public, and they wanted me to stay in my apartment. Your content is more valuable when you're alone, they said. My life is a cage now. I only go out for basic needs. Shopping, medical appointments, always with my phone, which I know is tracked. Always returning before they get impatient. Messages remind me, your audience is waiting. Don't stay out too long. Come home, Hollis. I've stopped job hunting. How do I explain that I need to work remotely from my apartment, always in view of my camera? How do I interview for jobs when every conversation is overheard? The payments keep coming. $1,000 weekly. Now more. $1,500, $2,000. It's escalating. They're incentivizing me to stay, to continue, to be the performer in a show I never asked to star in. My therapist, whom I see by video call because they fear an in-person therapist would encourage more resistance, says I'm experiencing psychological capture, that abusers use a combination of threat, reward, and control to create dependency. Cult techniques, basically. And it works, because here I am. I've tried contacting others. Are there more victims? I searched forums, survivor groups for cybercrime. Found one. User, Volunteer 443. He'd responded to the same ad a year earlier. His story was identical to mine up to the point where they threatened him. He resisted, covered all his cameras, destroyed his devices, moved in with family. 2 weeks later, he disappeared. His family reported a kidnapping. He was never found. The user, Volunteer 443, stopped posting. His account went inactive. But a month later, in a dark corner of a different forum, someone posted a link. Exclusive content, Subject 443, live stream 24/7. I clicked with trembling hands. It was him. In a small white room, no windows, cameras in every corner, filming non-stop. Him sitting on a mattress, staring into the void, completely broken. Comments on the stream. How much for premium access? Interactive. Can we give him orders? I like this one more than Subject 291. More initial resistance. Subject 291. There were more. Dozens, maybe. People who'd fallen into the same trap. Some still surveilled in their homes like me. Others taken, locked away, turned into permanent spectacles. I closed the window, vomited. That was the night I fully understood. I wasn't an isolated victim. I was a product on an assembly line, an established, refined system, operated by a sophisticated organization. And now, 4 months later, here I am. Writing this with a pen on paper because writing on a digital device would be recorded, analyzed, possibly punished. The green light of my camera watches me from the corner. It never blinks, never sleeps, always there. My audience, I don't know how many there are, dozens, hundreds, watches me. They eat while I eat. They see my face when I cry. They comment on my appearance, my habits, my deterioration. I've seen fragments of their comments when mocking messages arrive. Hollis looks depressed today. Give him some incentive. He's bored. I like him more when he's scared. I am entertainment, a human zoo, a forced reality show where every moment is content. Why don't I resist more? Why don't I destroy everything and accept the consequences? Because I saw what happened to Volunteer 443. Because I know they have resources, reach, willingness to enforce their threats. Because the alternative to remote surveillance is real imprisonment in a windowless room under absolute surveillance. At least here, I can go out occasionally. At least I can see the sun. At least I maintain the illusion of freedom even though I'm completely observed. It's rationalization. I know. My therapist knows. But when you face the threat of kidnapping by a criminal organization with proven ability to track and harm, the options narrow to survival or principles, and survival won. So here I am, writing on paper that I'll immediately burn, trying to preserve some fragment of privacy in a life where privacy doesn't exist. Hollis Brennan, 22 years old, college graduate with no future, prisoner in my own apartment, involuntary star of a sinister show for an audience that pays to watch my misery. And the most terrifying part, I'm getting used to it. The first months were constant panic. Now it's normalcy. I wake up, mentally greet the camera, go through my day knowing they're watching, lie down under the green light that never turns off. The normalization of horror is perhaps the deepest horror, that you can adapt to almost anything, even to this. Is there escape? Maybe. The FBI is still investigating. They say they've made minor arrests, seized servers, but the network is large, international, resilient. For every node that falls, 3 more emerge. In the meantime, I exist, observed, recorded, archived, monetized. My life is no longer mine. It's content, it's product, it's a warning to others. Don't accept offers that are too good to be true. Don't install software from strangers. Don't sell your privacy for quick money. Because once you let the digital eyes in, they never fully leave. Always watching, always recording, always there. And if you try to close the door on them, they'll come physically, take you, lock you away, and turn remote surveillance into live torture for an audience that pays extra to watch resistance being broken. So I keep the camera on, act out my life for invisible spectators. And every night, when the green light glows in the darkness, I remind myself, at least I'm here, in my space, not in a white room with only a mattress and cameras in every angle. At least I have that. For now. But how long until even that thin illusion of freedom is stripped away? Until they decide remote content isn't enough anymore? Until they want total control, not just observation? I don't know. And that uncertainty is their power over me, keeping me online, obedient, observed, forever observed. The green light blinks. Someone just joined the stream, new viewer. Welcome to the show. Welcome to my life, which is no longer mine. My name is Zephyr Kane, And if you've ever wondered what it feels like to look in a broken mirror and see not only the fragments of your face, but the pieces of your soul scattered on the floor like sharp crystals that cut deep, then maybe you understand why I'm writing this. It's not a diary, not a confession for a therapist with cold eyes who charges by the hour in the psychiatric wing of Cook County Hospital. It's a manifesto, a scream scrawled on the walls of my mind with splintered nails and invisible ink, a testament to how art, that seductive bastard I swore would save me, dragged me into the abyss of shattered mirrors, a club hidden in the depths of the net where pain isn't just an idea, but something raw and real spat back into the world for it to contemplate with a shiver. Chicago in 2025 was already a hell of concrete and dying neon, with Lake Michigan lapping at the shores like a shadow hungry for more lost souls. And I, a street artist of 37 years, with veins marked by crack like dry rivers of broken dreams, was just another ghost wandering in that city that devours the weak. My addiction had started innocently, a white powder to keep my hand steady while painting murals on the walls of Wicker Park alleys, scenes of fallen angels with graffiti wings bleeding vibrant colors onto the dirty brick. But crack became my dark muse, a fire in the brain that made me see visions, distorted faces in the clouds of smoke, figures writhing in the shadows of the scribbles I left on the sidewalks with stolen chalk. The debts piled up like growing shadows. Overdue rent in my dingy Pilsen studio, a dump with a roof that dripped like an open wound during the lake storms. Medical bills for the nasal infections the powder had left me with, ulcers that oozed when I wiped with crumpled bills. And the loan shark, a tough guy named Victor Slade, who'd given me a week to pay the $5,000 I owed him before his men used me as target practice for their threats. I slept little, fed on old ramen and cans of tuna that smelled of metal, and my drawings, those murals I'd once sold for hundreds in underground galleries, were now frenzied scribbles in notebooks I threw in the trash, stained with sweat from my cracked fingers. One August night, with suffocating heat clinging to my skin like an extra layer of nightmare, I sat on the floor of my studio, the cracked pipe smoking between my trembling lips, the smoke filling my lungs like a toxic whisper promising eternal visions. The high left me euphoric for minutes, seeing patterns in the ceiling cracks that looked like faces whispering secrets. But the crash was a black pit. Tremors that made me spill the dirty water glass. Paranoia that had me barricade the door with an unsteady chair, convinced Victor and his men were already coming for me. It was then, in that pit of desperation, when my phone, an old Android with a cracked screen that vibrated like a wounded insect, showed me an ad in an underground art forum. Explore the true living art in shattered mirrors. Donations for performances that break the soul. Enter if you dare. The link was an onion, a portal to the deep web that my instincts screamed to avoid. But the crack had eroded my judgment like sand in the wind, and with fingers still shaking, I downloaded Tor, set up an improvised VPN with YouTube tutorials, and entered. The site loaded slowly, the screen flickering like an irregular pulse, and there it was. Shattered Mirrors, a virtual club where artists, or what was left of them, uploaded live extreme performances, not with paints or sculptures, but with their own essence, Bitcoin donations falling like digital applause for whoever pushed the boundaries beyond the imaginable. The first video I saw was a hook in my mind, an invisible thread that dug deep and wouldn't let go. It was a man around 50, framed in a blurry webcam that lit his basement, bare concrete walls stained with dark shadows, the air heavy with a weight I could almost feel, old sweat and something metallic. He called himself Fracture King 87, and he sat in an old chair, hands extended toward the camera like a preacher in trance, rusty tools dangling from his fingers. "This is for you, broken mirrors," he growled, his hoarse voice crunching like gravel. "Art is born from pain, and pain, from sacrifice." The chat, a stream of anonymous nicks like Bleed Whisper or Flesh Canvas, exploded in skull and broken heart emojis, donations tinkling like coins in a distant can. He clamped the tools around his finger, the metal biting with a dull snap that echoed in my headphones, and pulled. The sound was raw, a crunch that made me grit my teeth, blood gushing in a red flow that splattered the lens in slow drops. He screamed, a deep animal moan that rose and fell like a broken wind, the stump bleeding, fibers exposed to the air. But he didn't stop. He lifted the severed piece, still warm, and brought it to his mouth with almost sacred reverence. He chewed slowly, the act deliberate and disturbing, the imagined taste churning my stomach. The chat went wild. More, King, make it eternal. He obeyed, swallowing with effort, his face contorted in a trance grimace, eyes fixed on the camera, as if inviting me to join. I donated $50 in bitcoins, everything I had, the click a silent pact, and the crack high mixed with something new, a dark vertigo, a guilty fascination that left me breathless, my pulse racing as the video ended with him sealing the wound with fire, the hiss filling the air like a final whisper. That night, the crash was worse. A void that left me trembling on the floor, the walls closing in like a trap. But the forum had me hooked, pulling me back to the screen at dawn, the sun filtering through the dirty windows like a diluted veil. Shattered Mirrors was an abyss of performances, each a step deeper. A woman injecting substances that burned from within, her skin bubbling, as she moaned a broken melody, the chat donating for every sign of struggle. A duo sewing each other in silence, blood purling on their faces in a shared ritual that ended in choked gasps. I donated more, $100, $200, selling old drawings on the street to reload, the crack fueled by my own spiral, a cycle where the videos stoked the fire consuming me. The tension grew with every click, the cursor hovering over join as artist. My mind torn between fear and longing. What if it was me next? What if my art needed something real to come alive? Victor called 3 times that week, his voice a growl, 3 days, Kane, or I take what you value most. The fear was a knot, but the forum was an escape. And one night, with crack burning in my veins, I sent the application. I want to break my mirror. Zephyr Kane 37. The response came quickly from Mirror Master. Welcome, Zephyr. Create your broken mirror. $5,000 for live performance. Theme, personal sacrifice. Send proposal. Remember, art demands everything. Failure is disappearance. The proposal poured from my fingers like a torrent. Bound in my studio, I'll cut marks into my skin with a scalpel, offer them to the ritual before the camera. Pain as communion with the void. Then seal the act with fire, so the smoke is my offering. Mirror Master approved. Perfect. Live in 48 hours. $5,000 upon completion. Failure. End. Panic flooded me, cold sweat soaking my clothes, the studio closing in like a cell. Could I? The crack screamed yes, painting visions of glory, but the crash whispered no, reminding me of past scars. 2 days in a blur, buying chains at a hardware store where they looked at me suspiciously, the scalpel from a pharmacy in an impulse that left me trembling in an alley, smoking behind a dumpster. The night arrived with a storm, thunder like distant blows, lightning illuminating dancing shadows. I bound myself alone, the chains biting with a metallic clink, the metal sinking until drops welled, which I licked, the taste awakening a dark hunger. The camera ready, the chat buzzing. Break, Zephyr. Make us feel. I started with a monologue, hoarse voice. The mirror breaks when you see your reflection consuming itself. Today, I offer my essence to the void. The scalpel gleamed, kissing my bare skin. I pressed, and the prick turned to fire, cutting a furrow that released a red thread, the pain a lightning bolt arching me against the chains. I pulled the mark, the flesh exposed, and brought it to my mouth, the act deliberate and raw, the salty taste exploding as I chewed, juices dripping down my chin, the chat donating, $50 for the first step. The pain throbbed, blood dripping to the floor, but the madness transformed it into something more, my body responding in a traitorous pulse. I sealed with a cigarette, the hiss a scream in my ears, flesh bubbling, the smell of burning filling the room, the pain blinding me as the chat exploded in donations. The live ended with $5,000, but the crash was an abyss. I unbound the chains, trembling, the wound a throbbing crater, curled on the floor, sobbing not for the body, but for the crack in my soul that shattered mirrors had opened, a mirror where I saw the monster waiting. The invitation to collaborate arrived 2 weeks later, the wound suppurating under a scab that itched like living memories, the crack demanding more. Mirror Master, your mirror was beautiful. Now break another's. $10,000. Kidnap a passerby. Theme, forced sacrifice. Record everything. Failure, toward exposure. The money drowned the horror. Victor had sent a thug who left me with a swollen eye and a final threat. But the task was a sharp edge. I planned in a feverish high, the loop at 2 a.m., knife ready. I found him in an alley, a guy around 30 with glassy eyes, urinating against the wall. The knife at his neck silenced him. Move, and you're done. I dragged him to my van, his clumsy resistance earning me a scratch I licked in anticipation. I bound him in the studio, waking him with cold water, his terrified face reflected in the puddle. "Welcome to the mirror," I murmured, camera recording, chat joining. His name, Ronan Hale, an electrician broken by life. I stripped him slowly, the knife tracing lines in his clothes, his body exposed and trembling. The chat demanded, "Start," and I obeyed with the shears, metal biting his finger in a crunch that released blood, his guttural scream vibrating in the air. I forced him to confront the act, the knife at his throat breaking him, chewing in retches, juices dripping, chat donating furiously. The tension was electric, the air thick with raw smells, chat whispering more. My madness drove me, smearing the tool with his essence, flipping him, thrusting in a brutal back and forth that made him convulse, blood gushing, wet sounds resonating. The act consumed me, a dark pulse, chat donating thousands. I sealed with a plastic bag, his breath fogging it, body convulsing until still, the last gasp a bubble. The chat applauded, $10,000 transferred, laughing hysterically as the body fell, dust rising. The spiral didn't stop. Ronan was the catalyst, my studio a hidden slaughterhouse, his body buried under layers of paint that smelled of secrets. Mirror Master, $20,000. Theme, eternal silence. Chat buzzing. Offer everything, Zephyr. I prepared with rituals, sharp scissors, broken mirror, thick chains. The transmission with thunder, I declared, silence is the supreme art. I cut my tongue, wet snip releasing blood that filled my mouth, chewing the piece in snaps, metallic taste exploding, chat going mad. I swallowed retching, cutting lips, forearms, strips of flesh offered painful symphony. The knife in my abdomen, blade tearing in a squelch, pulling out steaming loops, tangling them like rope, vision blurring. I survived barely. Neighbor calling. Emergency hospital a blur of lights and tubes. The internment at Northwestern Memorial was a white limbo, walls smelling of forgetfulness, injections clouding me. Diagnosed with induced schizophrenia, but shattered mirrors fractured my mind, hallucinations whispering from cracks. Victor arrested, but an envelope arrived, USB with note, your definitive mirror, auctioned for $50,000. The video, my ritual edited, close-ups of agony, chat a chorus of thousands. Mirror Master, your madness is our work. Join again. I laughed gurgling, knowing the club didn't let go, my soul its eternal canvas, reproducing on the web until another bit the hook. Chicago devoured, and I was just an echo in its infinite hunger. I remember the smell of burnt coffee in my Capitol Hill apartment in Seattle that September morning of 2024 when the sky clung to the ceiling like a gray and damp sheet. And I, Kai Lennox, 28 years old, injected the third dose of amphetamine of the day just so my fingers wouldn't tremble over the keyboard. I was a remote software engineer for a fintech startup in San Francisco, but the remote was an illusion. The deadlines devoured me alive, and the amphetamines were my rusted lifeline, that sharp pinch in the vein of my forearm that made the world speed up, that made the code flow like fresh blood. But the addiction had turned me into a zombie with dark circles spreading like black roots under my eyes, and the rumor that reached me through an anonymous Reddit thread. Mind Fracture Labs, Deep Web, paid experiments to cure addictions, thousands of dollars for voluntary trials. Sounded like the kind of desperate salvation a guy like me needed. I didn't think twice. I downloaded Tor, navigated through links that broke like fragile veins, and there it was. A forum as black as the bottom of the Puget Sound, with a logo of a brain splitting into red fractals. Join if your mind is already broken, the banner said. My heart beat with the chemical pulse, and I created an account with a fake name, Fractured Bite. What could go wrong? I just needed the money for rehab, or so I told myself, as the cursor blinked like a nervous tick. The forum wasn't what I expected. There were no self-help threads or inspiring testimonials. It was a living archive, a digital mausoleum of past voluntary trials, links to videos that loaded with eternal buffering, as if the server itself doubted what it was about to show. The first video I opened was called Subject 47, Auditory Enclosure. It was a guy around 40, greasy hair stuck to his forehead, crammed into a 1 cubic meter wooden box, knees against his chest, the space so tight that his breathing sounded like a broken bellows. There were no visuals at first, just audio, invisible speakers playing screams. Screams from his wife, his daughter, his brother. "Please, no," shrieked a female voice, followed by a dull thud, like a hammer of flesh against bone, the crack of a knee shattering, the muffled groan turning into a sob. I could smell damp wood in my mind, though I only saw it on screen, but I could imagine the rancid sweat odor accumulating in that box, the body heat turning into thick vapor. Subject 47 writhed, his nails scratching the lid, leaving red furrows on his fingers, and he murmured, "It's fake, it's fake." But his voice broke when the audio changed. Slow strangulation with a wire, the metallic scrape against skin, the gurgle of the trachea crushing, purple marks swelling on the neck like bruises from brutal lovers. It lasted weeks, the comments said. The guy came out speaking in nonsensical rhymes, his mind a jumbled puzzle. I closed the video, but the sound stayed in my ears, an echo that made my skin bristle under my sweat-soaked t-shirt. Was it real? Deep web forums were full of fakes, but the details, the iron smell of the blood I imagined splattering the wood, the sticky touch of the moisture on the box's walls. I injected another dose to drown the disgust, the pinch burning like a traitorous kiss. Next video. Subject 12, Mirror of the Flesh. A young woman, maybe my age, tied to a chair in a basement with cracked concrete walls, lit by a hanging bulb that flickered like an irregular pulse. The camera focused on her face first, eyes swollen from crying, but then pulled back. In front of her, a screen showed her own violation recorded in real time, but edited live to make it seem like she was being mutilated. Rusty scissors cutting flesh, the snip-snip metallic followed by the wet sound of tissue tearing, like soaked fabric ripping. She screamed, but the speaker synchronized her howls with those on the screen, where a blurry figure, maybe her, maybe not, writhed as blood dripped into red pools that coagulated into sticky clumps at the frame's edge. I could almost smell it. That metallic and sweetish aroma of fresh blood mixed with the rust of the scissors, the salty sweat of her skin under the raw lights. The comments below talked about optimal psychic fracture, how the subject had begged for death after 3 days, breaking her own nails against the straps just to avoid seeing more. My stomach churned, an acid knot rising in my throat, but I didn't close the tab. Instead, I searched for the recruitment thread. Simple experiments for beginners. Record your addiction diary. Send anonymously. $2,000 transferred in crypto instantly. Guaranteed cure through controlled exposure. Simple, realistic. I was already fractured. What was one more video? I replied to the admin, a user called Fracture Master, with a trembling message. Interested. How do I proceed? The response came in seconds. Upload the first entry. Be honest. Your mind is the canvas. I recorded it that night, in my narrow bathroom, with cracked tiles that smelled of mold and old bleach. I sat in front of the fogged mirror, the phone camera focusing on my gaunt face, blue veins bulging like rivers in my temples from the amphetamines. I'm Kai Lennox, I said, my voice hoarse like gravel. 28 years old, Seattle. I started with prescribed Adderall, but now it's pure methamphetamine, injected 3-4 times a day. It keeps me coding until 3 in the morning. But the crash. God, the crash is like falling into a bottomless pit. Tremors that make me spill the coffee. Paranoia that my neighbors hear my cries. I talked about the mild hallucinations, shadows in the corners of my screen that looked like eyes, the burnt smell in my nose when the high faded, leaving only the void. I uploaded the file, my heart hammering like buggy code. 2 hours later, the crypto arrived. $2,000. In my Monero wallet, a torrent of numbers that made me laugh, a hysterical sound that bounced off the walls. Welcome, Subject 89, Fracture Master replied. Next phase, mild tactile exposure. Cut superficially on your forearm with a razor. Film the blood dripping. Send, $500 extra. I hesitated, my pulse racing, but the money. Rehab on the outskirts of Tacoma cost double. I pulled out my pocket knife, the bone handle smooth against my sweaty palm, and pressed the blade against the inner skin of my arm, right over the vein I used to inject. The cut was superficial, a scratch that burned like liquid fire, and the blood welled up in red pearls that slid slowly, dripping into the sink with a rhythmic plick-plick. The smell was warm, coppery, like hot coins in summer. I filmed it all, the zoom on the wound opening like a small mouth, the viscous texture of the blood as it dried on my skin. I sent it. And while waiting, I wondered if it was me trembling or if the world was tilting. Was it just a cut, or the beginning of something that would break me like those subjects? The days blurred into a chemical fog, Seattle's eternal drizzle tapping my window like insistent fingers, and Fracture Master's messages escalated like an unstoppable algorithm. Excellent, 89. Now, sleep deprivation. Tie yourself to a chair with leather straps. Leave the camera rolling for 48 hours. Listen to this audio loop. Visions of your family dismembered. He attached a sound file, and I opened it by mistake before preparing. Distorted voices screaming my name. Kai, help me. Followed by saws rasping flesh, the dry and fibrous sound of tendons snapping, bones crunching like dry branches under boots. Imagined smells, the acrid stench of exposed guts, bile and feces mixed in panic. I tied myself that night, using leather straps I found in a forgotten drawer, inheritance from an ex who collected BDSM kits, the buckles biting my wrists, cutting off circulation until my feet tingled, as if thousands of needles were pricking them. The chair was hard, splintered wood against my back, and I set the audio on loop at low volume at first, but sleep wouldn't come. Instead, the hallucinations started early, amplified by fatigue and residual amphetamines. I saw my sister Elowen in the corner of the room, her 30-year-old face, with that freckle on her left cheek that always made me think of constellations, contorted in agony, an imaginary knife opening her abdomen, the sound of the blade sinking into soft flesh, a wet pop followed by gurgles. It's not real, I repeated to myself, biting my lip until I tasted salty blood, but the straps tightened with every hour, leaving purple marks that throbbed like alien heartbeats. At dawn on the second day, I hallucinated my mother, with her gray hair like sea mist, crawling toward me with her entrails hanging out, the smell of hot viscera invading the stale air of my apartment, and I screamed until my throat tore. When I untied myself, the hands trembling so much I could barely unbuckle, the video lasted 48 hours of me babbling incoherencies, tears streaking my face like salty rivers. I sent it, and the payment arrived, but with it a message. Your sanity cracks beautifully. Next, personal recreation. Use a stripped wire for mild shocks on your thigh. Film the smoke from the burning skin. The terror gripped me then, a cold knot in my stomach, because when had I started to question if the form was real, or if my mind, rotten from drugs, had invented it all? But the cursor was already over send, and my finger moved on its own. The electric shock was worse than I imagined. I stripped the insulation from an old extension cord, the black rubber peeling away, leaving exposed copper wires that smelled of melted plastic when I rubbed them against my palm. I sat on the living room floor, threadbare carpet under my bare buttocks, the camera on an improvised tripod of stacked books. The left thigh, pale skin dotted with fine hair, trembled as I brought the wire close to a wall outlet, the low hum of electric juice waiting like a snake. I pressed play on the timer, and the first touch was a snap, a blue arc that bit my flesh, the immediate smell of burnt meat rising like smoke from a failed barbecue, charred and acidic. I screamed, the sound reverberating in my ears, and the skin blistered instantly, a red bubble that burst with a pop, exuding clear serum mixed with blood that coagulated into sticky clumps as it cooled. Each subsequent shock was amplified agony. The sizzle, the heat sinking into the muscle like a red-hot iron, leaving black marks that throbbed with every heartbeat. I hallucinated between touches. The wire wasn't mine, but the one from the strangulation video, and I saw it coiled around Eloin's neck, her skin swelling purple, breath escaping in wet gasps. I hesitated on the third touch, sweat dripping into my eyes, clouding everything, and wondered if this was the cure or the poison, if Fracture Master was a sadistic therapist or just a bot from my fractured subconscious. But the forum always responded quick as a heartbeat. Keep going. 89. Your pain is data. I sent the video, the thigh a map of smoking blisters, and the payment arrived with a new link. Reward. Personalized video. Download for your reflection session. The video loaded slowly, the buffering a beat that accelerated my pulse, and when it started, the world collapsed. It was Eloin, my sister, in an unknown room, maybe a basement on the outskirts of Olympia, with gray block walls and a dripping pipe in the background. She was tied to a rusted metal table, her blouse torn hanging off one shoulder, revealing fresh bruises on her collarbone. The camera was handheld, shaky, and a man in black gloves, face pixelated, voice distorted, approached. The first punch landed in her abdomen, a dull thud that made her arch, vomiting a stream of bile and blood that splattered the lens, the imagined smell of stomach acid burning my nose from the screen. She gasped, "Kai, please," and her voice, that voice that read me fairy tales when we were kids in our Tacoma house, broke into sobs. Then the fingers, wrapped in exposed wires inserted into her vagina. The sound of fabric tearing mixed with her scream, a shriek that pierced my eardrums like broken glass. "Electrocution of nerves," the torturer's voice murmured, and the electric snap made her body convulse, blisters forming on her inner skin, the stench of charred flesh filtering through the speakers like an olfactory ghost. It culminated with the plastic bag, transparent, sealed over her head, fogging with her agonized breath, condensation droplets running like tears as her eyes glazed over, the veins in her neck swelling purple against the plastic. She pounded the table, knuckles leaving red marks, and murmured my name until the gurgle drowned in silence. The video ended with a frozen frame of her face, eyes open in eternal accusation. I vomited on the floor, the acid burning my esophagus, and ran to the bathroom, fumbling with my phone to call Eloin, her number in Eugene, Oregon, where she worked as a botanist at a nursery. It rang and rang, voicemail. "Eloin, Pick up, for God's sake." Nothing. I searched Facebook, Instagram, her last photo, 2 days ago, smiling with a daisy in her hair, but the forum already knew. Escape attempt detected, 89. Your videos are ours. Deliver an innocent neighbor, or the next one is your mother, Liv. Panic consumed me like the amphetamines, a fire that made me run in circles around the apartment, the drizzle outside turning into a storm that battered the windows like fists. My neighbor, Thane Whitaker, a weird 35-year-old guy, adjunct literature professor at the University of Washington with a scruffy beard and thick-framed glasses, always greeted me in the hallway with a "good day, Kai" that sounded like from another century. I'd seen him stumble in the night before, smelling of cheap whiskey, and now I saw him as the perfect sacrifice. Innocent, isolated, no close family in Seattle. I waited until midnight, the building silent except for the drip of a roof leak, and went out into the hallway with a roll of duct tape and a rag soaked in improvised chloroform. Ether from a cleaning kit I'd stolen from the pharmacy. I knocked on his door, pretending a plumbing emergency, and when he opened it, eyes sleepy and a mariner's t-shirt stained, I lunged, pressing the rag to his mouth, inhaling the chemical vapor myself that made me dizzy. He struggled, his nails digging into my forearm, leaving bloody furrows that burned like reminders, but his body went limp, a dead weight I dragged into my apartment, the smell of sweat and fear impregnating the air. I tied him to the deprivation chair, leather straps biting his wrists, and plugged the stripped wire into the wall, the hum a sinister hymn. When he woke, babbling, "What the hell, Kai?" I showed him the screen with Eloin's video lying, "Confess your betrayal to the lab, or we fry you like her." The first electric touch was on his chest, over the t-shirt, the snap making his skin sizzle through the fabric, smoke rising with the smell of burnt cotton and roasted meat, blisters forming in furious red. He screamed, a guttural sound that bounced off my walls, and his false confession came out between gasps. "I betrayed, I'm sorry, please." I filmed it all, sweat dripping from his forehead into salty pools, the texture of his blistered skin under my fingers when I adjusted the straps, viscous and hot. I left him there for hours, interrogating him with shocks that burned black furrows into his thighs, the sound of flesh subtly tearing when the skin split, blood coagulating into clumps that stuck to the chair. In the end, I dragged him back to his apartment semi-conscious, muttering promises of silence, and sent the video to the forum. The payment arrived, but with it an emptiness. Had I really killed Eloin? I called again. Nothing. Paranoia devoured me, shadows in the curtains seeming like silhouettes of torturers. Madness settled in like a permanent fog, Seattle's mist blending with the haze in my head, and the experiments became self-imposed, the forum just an echo in my broken mind. I dreamed of Eloin every night, her face fogged in the bag, and woke with sheets soaked in cold sweat, the smell of fear, urine. One night, after a double dose that made me see fractals in the ceiling cracks, I played the video again, frame by frame, memorizing every detail, the punch sinking into her abdomen, the vomit splattering with undigested food chunks, the imagined smell of acidic bile, the wires inserting, the electric sizzle making her pelvis arch, internal blisters that would make her bleed for days, the bag sealing her fate, the plastic crinkling with every desperate breath, condensation droplets running like veins. "Shared pain," Fracture Master murmured in the last message, and something in me broke completely. I stripped naked in the bathroom, the mirror reflecting a gaunt body, veins like maps on my arms, and pulled out the knife, the blade trembling against my right thigh. The cut was deep, deliberate, mimicking the punch, the skin parting with a soft sound like wet paper ripping, blood gushing in a hot torrent that smelled of iron and salt, dripping onto the floor in pools that coagulated at the edges into gelatinous textures under my bare feet. I screamed her name, Eloin, and the pain was a bridge, a perverse bond that united me to her, but madness twisted everything. In the frenzy, my hand descended, masturbating with the blood as lubricant, the viscous heat sliding over my skin, a sick ecstasy mixed with hysterical crying, sobs drowning in moans as I imagined her agony as mine, the climax coming in waves of nausea and forbidden bliss, semen mixing with blood in a pinkish pool that stank of corrupted life. I came screaming, the body convulsing against the sink, and then the void. What had I done? The knife still in my hand, I pressed it against the femoral artery, a final cut to join us in death, blood spurting in pulses that painted the tiles red, the world darkening in a whirl of cold and regret. I woke in Harborview Hospital, tubes in my veins, the beeping of monitors like infinite code. They'd found my body by the smell, coagulated blood, and charred meat from the blisters, a neighbor alerted by the screams. Alawen. She was alive, they told me later. The video a master deepfake, her voice synthesized from old text messages, her face superimposed from stolen photos. But the damage was done. Thane Whitaker had fled to Portland, reporting assault, and the police traced my IP to the forum. But Mind Fracture Labs was a ghost. Servers in the darknet evaporated. They gave me sedatives, therapy, but in the quiet nights, when the Puget Sound whispered against the docks, I checked my old laptop hidden away. A new message from Fracture Master. Welcome to the lab. Your fractured mind is our finest creation. And then I understood. It wasn't an experiment. I was the experiment. My sanity, shredded into videos and cuts, was their masterpiece, a fractal of real terror, without supernatural shadows, just broken humans devouring each other on the net. Now, sitting in my new room, with bars disguised as curtains, I inhale the sterile air and wonder if the next cut will be imaginary, or if, deep down, I'm still recording for them. The drizzle beats the window, and I hear, or think I hear, the snap of a stripped wire, waiting. There are moments when I wish I could rip out my memories like pages from a book and burn them until nothing remains but ash. But memory doesn't work that way. Memory is a scar that never stops burning. My name is Thessaly Crane. I am 32 years old, and 6 months ago I made the mistake that destroyed my life. Not with a crime of passion, not with an addiction, not with anything so dramatic. I did it with a click. A single click on a link from a deep web forum called Discretionary Tasks. I should start from the beginning, I suppose, with the reason why a normal person, an administrative assistant from Portland with a college degree and decent job references, ends up navigating the depths of the internet looking for quick money. My mother, Elowen, was dying, not in a poetic or cinematic way. She was dying of stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and every day that passed, her body wasted away a little more while the medical bills piled up like a mountain of paper threatening to bury us. My insurance had reached its limit. Hers too. The experimental treatments that could give her 6 more months, maybe a year, cost $40,000 that I didn't have. I tried everything conventional first, loans that were rejected, GoFundMe campaigns that barely raised $1,200, night jobs that left me exhausted and still insufficient. And then, in a Reddit forum about financial desperation, someone mentioned a place. They didn't give details, just a Tor link and a warning. Only if you really have no other option. I had no other option. The forum was called Discretionary Tasks. The design was minimalist, almost brutally simple. White text on a black background. No images, no ads, nothing that could be easily traced. Just a list of jobs with associated payments and an encrypted messaging system. Most of the tasks were strange, but not apparently illegal. Buy these specific items and leave them at this location, $200. Take photos of this building at these hours, $150. Call this number and say exactly these words, $100. I needed more than that, much more. There was a different section in the forum, marked only with 3 asterisks. The jobs there paid much better. Thousands of dollars per task. but they required absolute commitment and permanent discretion. Once you accepted, you couldn't back out. I accepted the first job on a rainy Tuesday in March. The user identified only as architect. The message was simple. Deliver this package to the attached address, exactly at 3:47 a.m. on Friday. Do not knock on the door, do not look inside the package. Just leave it on the step and go. $3,000 will be transferred to your crypto account 1 hour after completing the task. Confirm your acceptance. $3,000 for delivering a package. My hand trembled over the keyboard for what felt like an eternity. Then I pressed send. I accept. The package arrived 2 days later at a P.O. box they had instructed me to rent. It was a small box, the size of a paperback book, wrapped in brown paper and black duct tape. It weighed very little. All Thursday, that box sat on my nightstand and I stared at it as if it were a bomb that could detonate at any moment. I didn't open it. That's what I repeated to myself like a mantra. I didn't open it. The address was in the industrial zone north of Portland, near the abandoned shipyards, where the fog rolls in so thick you could cut it with a knife. At 3 a.m, the streets were completely deserted. Just my 2008 Honda Civic advancing down rain-slick streets. The house was a dilapidated wooden structure with boarded-up windows and a yard full of knee-high weeds. Exactly the kind of place that shows up in local news when they find a body. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I parked, took the box, walked to the step. My hands sweated inside the latex gloves architect had instructed me to wear. I left the box. I turned around. I walked back to the car. That was it. I drove home as dawn began to tint the sky gray. I showered. I lay down. At 5 a.m, my phone beeped. A notification from my crypto wallet. Transfer received. $3,000. I cried with relief. That should have been the moment I stopped. That should have been the moment I deleted everything, closed my Tor browser, and looked for another solution. Any other solution. But I didn't. 2 weeks later, I accepted the second job. This time, architect wanted photographs, specific detailed ones, of a house in the Beaverton suburbs. They gave me exact times, 6:34 a.m., 12:17 p.m., 9:43 p.m. Each photo from specific angles. The front door, the second floor window, the garage, the backyard seen from the neighbor's fence. $5,000. I felt like a criminal as I stalked that middle-class house with my camera. A woman named Marin lived there. I could see her name on the mailbox. Blonde hair, 30s, 2 small children, a minivan in the driveway, a husband who left every morning in a suit. A normal life. A life I was invading. The photographs came out sharp. I uploaded them to the forum through an encrypted server. The money arrived 6 hours later. I didn't investigate what happened with those photos. I didn't want to know. The third job came in April. My mother had started the experimental treatments thanks to my money. I was buying time, but she still needed more. Always needed more. Architect was direct. Observation and documentation. Follow the indicated subject for 1 week. Record their movements, routines, who they talk to, where they eat, when they're alone. Full details. $8,000. The subject was a man named Quilon Merrick, a 40-something accountant who worked downtown Portland. Thinning brown hair, thick glasses, forgettable face. The kind of person who disappears in a crowd. For 7 days, I was his shadow. I learned that he bought coffee at the same Starbucks every morning at 7:15. That he ate lunch alone at a Thai food cart on Tuesdays and Thursdays. That he went to the gym on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, but only stayed 30 minutes. That he was having an affair with a woman who wasn't his wife, meeting her at a cheap hotel near the airport every Wednesday at 6 p.m. I documented it all in a 50-page text file. Every detail, every pattern. When I sent it, I felt nauseous. Physically, I leaned over the toilet and vomited, because I knew, even if I didn't want to admit it, that I had just handed someone all the information needed to destroy Quilon Merrick's life. Or worse, The money arrived. I transferred it to the hospital. My mother had 2 more months. In May, the 4th job changed everything. It wasn't a delivery, nor photographs, nor surveillance. It was something different. Architect's message said, "You have proven reliable and discreet. The next level requires more. It requires that you trust the process completely. The payment is $15,000. Do you accept?" $15,000 was exactly what I needed for another 3 months of treatment. My mother was responding. The doctors talked about remission with caution, but they talked about it. I needed that money. I wrote, "I accept." The response came immediately. "Excellent. Your task, every night for the next 2 weeks, at exactly 11:47 p.m., you will receive a phone call on the burner number we will send you. You will answer. You will listen to the instructions. You will follow them exactly. You will question nothing. At the end of the 2 weeks, you will receive your full payment. Any deviation will result in permanent cancellation of the contract and consequences." The last word chilled my blood. Consequences. The burner phone arrived the next day. An old Nokia, the kind that can only make and receive calls. That night, at 11:47, it rang. The voice on the other end was digitally distorted, robotic, but understandable. "The Sally Crane. Leave your apartment. Walk 3 blocks north. There's a bench across from the park. Sit there for exactly 22 minutes. Do not look at your phone. Do not speak to anyone. After, return home." That was it. The call ended. It was almost midnight. The neighborhood was dark and empty. Every instinct screamed at me not to go, that this was madness, that I should stop now. But I thought of my mother, of her weak smile when the doctor said the tumor was shrinking, of the possibility of more time. I went. The park was wrapped in shadows. The bench was under a flickering streetlight that made my shadow dance strangely. I sat. I put my hands in my lap, and I waited. The 22 minutes were the longest of my life. Every sound, every rustle of leaves, every distant car passing made me jump. I felt eyes on me, though the streets were empty. I felt this was a test, but I didn't know of what. When my watch hit 22 minutes, I stood and walked back home. My apartment was exactly as I'd left it. No sign of intrusion, nothing out of place. But something had changed. I couldn't pinpoint what, exactly. Just a feeling in my stomach, a growing certainty that I'd crossed an invisible line. The second night, the instructions were different. Go to the supermarket on Hawthorne Avenue. Buy 1 red apple, only 1. Pay in cash. Take it home. At 2 a.m., leave it in your neighbor 4B's mailbox. After, wait at your door for 5 minutes. I did it. Everything exactly as told. My neighbor, an elderly woman named Clementine, was over 70 and rarely left her apartment. When I left the apple in her mailbox at 2 in the morning, I felt like a complete psychopath. I waited at my door. 5 minutes later, I heard her door open. Footsteps. Her door close. Nothing more. The third night. Drive downtown. Park in the Stark Street garage, level 4, space 47. Leave your car there for 40 minutes. Walk back. The fourth night. Buy a newspaper. Make a mark with a red pen on page 6, the city council article. Leave the newspaper on the Max bench, blue line, Hollywood Station. Each task was strange, seemingly senseless but not obviously criminal. And every night, after completing them, I returned home feeling more watched, more exposed. The 7th night changed tone. "There is an envelope in your mailbox. We placed it there 1 hour ago. Open it now." I ran down the stairs. The envelope was there, white, unmarked. Inside was a photograph. It was me, leaving my apartment that same morning, taken from across the street with a telephoto lens perfectly focused on my face as I locked my door. My legs nearly gave out. The voice on the phone continued. "Now you understand that we are watching you. Always. Your continued cooperation is essential. Tonight, no task, just this understanding." I didn't sleep that night, or the next. I checked every window, every angle from which someone could see me. I closed all the curtains. I moved through my apartment like a ghost, scared of my own shadow, but I didn't stop. Because the money kept coming, and my mother kept improving. The tasks for the remaining nights became more invasive. They made me photograph the interior of my own apartment from specific angles, record myself saying particular phrases, leave my daily routine documented minute by minute. Night 14, the final call came different. Thessaly Crane, you have completed the evaluation process satisfactorily. Your payment of $15,000 will be transferred tomorrow. However, there is now a final offer, a permanent contract. The details are simple. One more job, the most important one. The payment is $50,000. This will be your last chance to participate at this level. Do you accept? $50,000. That would pay for everything. My mother's full treatments, the debts, everything. I accept, I whispered. Excellent. Instructions will arrive in 72 hours. Stay available. For 3 days, I waited. Every moment was agony of anticipation and terror. What did they want me to do? Was there a line I wouldn't cross? What would happen if I said no now? The message came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was at work. The final contract. Deliver a package to the attached address. Exactly at 11:59 p.m. on Friday. Same rules. Do not open it. Do not knock on the door. Leave it and go. This is your final job. After this, your participation ends permanently. All payments are completed. All obligations end. Confirm your acceptance one last time. The address seemed familiar, but I couldn't place it right away. I wrote, I accept. The package arrived on Thursday. It was bigger this time, the size of a shoebox, and heavier. Something shifted inside when I tilted it. It wasn't solid. It sounded like papers, maybe. I didn't open it, though every fiber of my being wanted to. On Friday, I prepared everything. New gloves, dark clothes, the route planned. At 11 at night, I left my apartment with the box under my arm. It was only when I was 2 blocks away that I recognized it. The pattern of the streets, the park on the corner, the flickering streetlight. The address was my own building, my apartment, apartment 5C, my door. I braked so abruptly I nearly rear-ended the car behind me. My mind raced. This had to be a mistake, a test, something. But it wasn't a mistake. The address in the message was clear. My building number, my floor, my door. I parked in my usual spot, trembling. The box was on the passenger seat, innocent and terrible at once. I looked at my watch. 11:47 p.m., 12 minutes. I took the box, climbed the stairs. The building was silent. Just the hum of fluorescent hallway lights. My hallway, my door at the end. I walked like in a trance. Each step was a struggle against the impulse to run, to flee, to throw the box and disappear. But I had to know. After all this, after every strange task and every invasion of privacy, after selling my peace of mind piece by piece, I needed to understand what was happening. I reached my door, 11:58 p.m. I left the box on the floor, right on the mat that said "Welcome" in faded letters. I walked away. And then, because I was a human being and not a machine, because curiosity and fear can paralyze common sense, I stopped at the stairwell landing. I waited. 11:59 p.m. My door didn't open. The hallway remained empty. Nothing moved. Then I heard a soft creak, the sound of duct tape being peeled away. Someone was opening the box, but no one had come out of any apartment. No one had entered the building. The sound was coming from behind my own door. Something inside me broke. I ran to my door, pulled out my keys with trembling hands, unlocked it, and pushed the door open. My apartment was empty, lights off, exactly as I'd left it, except for the box. The box was open in my living room, the contents scattered on the floor. Photographs, dozens of them, hundreds. I approached on shaky legs and looked. They were all of me, leaving my building, getting into my car, in the supermarket, in the park that first night, leaving the apple in Clementine's mailbox, in the garage, at the Mac station. Every task I'd done, documented from multiple angles, as if there had been an entire team following me, photographing me, studying me. And then I saw the others, the ones that made me fall to my knees. Photographs of my apartment, from inside, my bed, my kitchen, my bathroom, taken when I wasn't there. Taken when I was there, sleeping, changing, living my life without knowing there were hidden cameras in every corner. At the bottom of the box, there was an envelope. With hands trembling that I could barely control, I opened it. Inside was a letter, printed on plain white paper. Dear Thessaly, congratulations on completing your contract. You have been an exemplary participant in our program. The purpose of these tasks was never the work itself, but the evaluation. The evaluation of your commitment, your obedience, your ability to follow instructions without question. The true product was not the deliveries, nor the photographs, nor the information. The true product was you. Over these weeks, you have demonstrated exactly how much control we can exert over a person with the right motivations. You have documented your own surveillance. You have participated in your own privacy violation. You have handed over every aspect of your life to us voluntarily. The final package was you yourself. The final delivery was returning all this information to your possession so that you would fully understand what you have lost. You will not receive the promised $50,000. That was always a fiction, but you have received something more valuable, the understanding that you were never in control, that every choice you thought you were making had already been anticipated and manipulated. The cameras are still active. The monitoring continues. Now you know we are here, but you will never know where. You will never know when. You will never know who we are. Your contract has ended, but your participation in our study is permanent. You are now part of the archive, a perfect case study. Thank you for your service. The architect P.S. Give our regards to your mother. Her treatments have been successful, thanks to your contribution. The letter fell from my hands. I searched my apartment frantically. I ripped picture frames from the walls, disassembled lamps, checked every outlet, every vent, every possible hiding spot. I found 3 cameras, small, the size of a button, perfectly camouflaged. 1 in the smoke detector, 1 in the wall clock, 1 in the base of my desk lamp. How many more were there? How many couldn't I find? I called the police. They came, took a report, photographed the cameras. But the forum had vanished. The user architect didn't exist. The crypto transfers were impossible to trace. There was no evidence of any organized criminal network. Just the cameras and the photographs. Probably some stalker, said the detective, a tired man named Gentry with coffee stains on his tie. Someone who got obsessed with you. Change the locks, maybe consider moving. But I knew it wasn't that simple. It wasn't a stalker. It was something bigger, colder, more calculated. I moved the next month to a new apartment in Gresham, away from downtown. I changed my number, deleted all my social media. I became a ghost. But the paranoia never went away. Every person on the street could be watching me. Every window could have a camera. Every sound at night could be someone entering. I checked my apartment obsessively, looking for new cameras, listening devices, signs of intrusion. Sometimes I find things. A mark on the window I don't remember. An object slightly moved. An empty envelope in my mailbox that shouldn't be there. Are they real, or am I losing my mind? I don't know. And that's the part that destroys me. They taught me not to trust my own perception, my own judgment. They trained me to obey without question, and now I question everything without being able to trust any answer. My mother is in remission. The treatments worked. She's alive, laughing, making plans for the future. She knows nothing about this. I told her the money came from an unexpected inheritance from a distant aunt. Sometimes I look at her and think, was it worth it? Is one life worth the price of another? But that's not the real question, is it? The real question is, am I still me? Or did I become what they needed me to be? A perfect puppet that dances even after the strings were cut. Last night, my phone rang at 11:47 p.m. An unknown number. I didn't answer, but the voicemail they left was just silence. Silence, and, at the end, the soft sound of someone breathing. This morning, I found something in my mailbox. No postage, no return address, just a white envelope. It's on my table now, unopened. I've been staring at it for 6 hours, because I know what opening it means. It means they're back. It means they never left. It means the contract I thought had ended never really ends. And the most terrifying part is this. A part of me wants to open it, wants to know what's inside, wants to follow the instructions I know I'll find, because they taught me well. They trained me perfectly. And that, more than the cameras, more than the photographs, more than the constant fear, is what really destroys me. They taught me to surrender myself, piece by piece, until nothing was left except the need to obey. And now, staring at this envelope, I wonder, can I resist? Or is it already too late? The envelope remains closed. For now. But I know, with a certainty that chills me to the bone, that eventually I will open it. Because that's what they made of me. And that's what I will remain until I find a way to escape this prison they built inside my own mind, if that's possible. If it was ever really under my control. The clock reads 11:46 p.m. In 1 minute, my phone is going to ring, and this time, I don't know if I'll have the strength not to answer.